So, seen any good moves lately? Welcome back to the finale episode of Seen any good moves lately, at least for this season, Survivor 48. We have a lot to talk about, whether it be Survivor 48, Survivor 49, and a lot about Survivor 50. And I couldn't think of any better guest to join me today than the person who kicked this all off, my good friend, the stupendous Sunder. How are you doing, Sunder?
I'm doing very good. Last couple of days have been good. I played badminton for like an hour today, uh, and I beat someone in a Pokemon match while eating out of a can of sardines. So things are going good. We're getting eventful. I have also learned the art of using a lint roller in public. That's been a new
Interesting.
update. Yeah, new job has me wearing black pants. Um, and sometimes your laundry machine or the dryer does not, it leaves some lint. You got to get
Yeah.
to work. And whether you're in a bus or in a Wendy's, you just got to lock in.
Yeah. Okay. So, how is the art of using it in public different than using it in private? I have to know.
You just, you can't have shame. At the
Okay.
end of the day, you just have to be there and say, look, we've all been in this kind of situation before. When I got the pants from Valley Village. I got black pants from Valley Village, and I was like, I need food. Grabbed a lint roller. I said, oh, these are so covered in lint. I just went to a Wendy's, got a combo. So I was like, I'm legally allowed to be here. I'm not loitering. Um, and then ate my meal, tossed my pants on a table, pulled out my lint roller, and just went to work.
Wow.
And then the same is I also lint rolled my pants on myself while on the bus. That one was fun. That was last night. I was literally just on the bus, just like, all right, we'll figure it out.
There's a lot to learn about that, and maybe just getting it done is something that some of the players in Survivor 48 should have kept in mind. Um, we're here at the finale. Let me just ask Sunder. We had you on for episode one,
Hmm.
and we've had a long, strenuous time since. I just have to ask, like, what have your thoughts on the season been, at least going into the finale?
Uh, Optimism. I think for me, it's optimism. I think a lot of online discussion harks on the negatives a lot.
Yeah,
Very much. A lot of it is thoughts about, oh, it isn't as good as it used to be, or this isn't something I immediately like. There's not a lot of consideration of a long term story. Um, Obviously, I think at points I may have been giving the editors a little more credit, or the cast a little more credit than in some other points. But based on what we saw, um, I'm always going to try to be optimistic with the season as it's coming, because unless it's like the most train wreck of all time, there's nothing really bad to being at least a little bit like, hey, it can get better.
yeah.
There's a chance. And so I thought the season had some pretty good characters, some people I latched onto that were going pretty far. Um, and I had no problem with that. I mean, obviously, yeah, there's going to be some boring boots, but when certain people choose to play in certain ways, there's only so many ways you can make it interesting.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you have to hope when there's a majority alliance, steamrolling in the way that it was, uh, that like it's the what is it? Short term
Yeah,
versus long term gratification. You can have
yeah,
it's bottled up, right? It's a can of soda that they're shaking. Every easy vote is them choosing to say, well, we're not going to pop it off yet. Just keep shaking it and pass it to the next guy. And they do that around a
yeah,
circle. And it doesn't blow up yet. But eventually, the game says this has to explode. And I think a lot of people forget that when they see it and they say, oh, well, this episode didn't have anything interesting. It didn't blow up. And it's like, yeah, but it's going to have to. And
yeah.
yeah, that's where I'm at.
And to speak on that, like I think this season is probably had about as long of a quote unquote delay as you could in that soda can explosion, because even here in the finale episode, when Mitch went home, it was very much like, oh, okay, this is just more than normal. We spent an hour on it, like it didn't need to be an hour, like And then we get to fire making, and then things start to pick up a little. And I think that real like explosion moment happens at Final Tribal Council when Camilla says, "Oh, Mitch, don't you have something to say? Something you've been holding on to?"
Yeah.
So that's the moment, and it happened basically as late as possible, as that moment can happen. But it
Hmm.
happens. So there you go.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. It feels weird though because again, like with Mitch and how much time was spent on him, it's like I don't know. I feel like there was more to have made it more explosive, but it feels I don't want to say it was like done to protect Joe, but like at the end of the day, there are narratives they wanted to have and in ideas they push within the story of a season, right? You take everything and you see, okay, this is the person who won, this is the footage we have of them. This is the person who got second, this is the footage we have of them, yada yada yada. They lay it out. I don't know exactly how to do it, but you have to make a narrative. And there's a couple points where you think this narrative's a little whack. But at the end of the day, they are trying to tell a story out of it. And so I think they may have pigeonholed themselves in a little bit with the stories they were trying to tell. Because I think, I mean, as we'll probably discuss later, some people have done some reviewing of postseason interviews, and there was some other stories that people might have wanted to see better or see more, but I'm
Yeah.
not opposed to the one we have.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of thoughts on the edit. I'm sure you do as well. And I know that there's a lot that we could get into just in terms of like the people who already went home and their perceptions versus reality,
Hmm.
but like what we have presented to us as an edited show, what we actually saw in the finale is something that I want to at least look at first, just to get a sense
Yeah.
of like where we're at before we, I guess, sort of dissect what's actually real about it and what's not. And the first thing about this finale episode is, um, once again, the producers to me feeling like they're trying to shove an advantage in. Like this is what I was thinking when I was watching. Like they're trying to shove an advantage in at the start of this finale episode to try to break up the impenetrable, undefeatable bond of Joe and Eva. And they throw in some advantage about something or other, an advantage in the challenge. And it's
Hmm.
like, oh, this is a big deal. It's a huge deal. Whoever wins this has power. And then it goes to Eva, who's gotten every single advantage so far, it feels
Yeah.
like. Yeah.
I my thing with that actually, I wasn't even thinking it that way. I just thought, oh yeah, it's the thing they do in the new era every season. Like
And they do that in the new
because
era every season.
this is a new era classic, and it's one of those things where it's like it's even the same kind of thing. Like it's fortunate for the people who did it that it is the type of advantage that it was, because Eva has experience with it. I forget how much Joe has experience with it, but wasn't it Kyle and Camilla had experience with it, or was that Mitch? I forget exactly who on their tribe did something with that, but they
I
had their
can't
thing.
remember.
But at the end, everyone had some level of experience with it, and so it's kind of fortunate for the people at the end to have it there because it's better than like you have one person who goes through all the season and goes, "What's this?" and everyone else is like, "Oh yeah, I did this in my sleep like 2 weeks ago."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. And I mean, there's something to be said about like all the advantages. Like it really does feel like, as you said, they do this every new era season. They try to sort of force an advantage to be happen, something to shake the game up when
Oh
final six. A challenge win at final six isn't necessarily going to actually set the world on fire. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah. Um, but anyways, so the challenge itself, Eva gets this advantage, but she doesn't end up winning it. Camilla ends up winning it because it all comes down to the puzzle, and the puzzle sort of serves as the great equalizer. And good for Camilla. Yeah, I mean, she gets to go to the sanctuary. It's
Where good
interesting
things happen. Where
where
good
good
things
things
happen.
happen. It's true. It's interesting that Camilla wins this with the knowledge of her perception after the game. And I think it's interesting to bring this up now because Camilla, I guess, in the eyes of the jury, was a lock to win if she made it to the end.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, to me, the vote, which would have been a little more interesting had, say, Kyle won instead of Camilla, now becomes okay, Camilla can't go home, so maybe we just get rid of Mitch.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, it is like it could be more interesting if it is Kyle, but like I thought there really would have been more hesitation or more thought really to get rid of Joe and Eva. I mean, I think like it's weird because the way this season was set up, we obviously don't have a full level of everything, but like Kyle and Camilla played really well. Like to know that Kyle and Camilla were really just the front runners out of that group and probably would have gotten there. I don't know if Mitch like would have had that same. I haven't read anything on Mitch's perspective or perception from the jury, but I know for sure like basically Joe and Eva were Kyle and Camilla's goats. Like they were just riding them to the end. And so while it seems frustrating through most of that season of like, why are they going for him? In retrospect, it's like, okay, they weren't going for him because people weren't going to vote for him. Like you could
Here's
just beat him.
what's interesting about Mitch, and this is something I've been reading up about. You know what Mitch's perception was. Not only was his perception on the island between Kyle and Camilla and whomever else that he was a threat at the end. It was
Mm-hmm.
also just reality. Like it appears that a lot of the jury members would have seriously actually considered voting Mitch at the end if he were there because he
Mm-hmm.
didn't have any blood on his hands, because everybody liked him, et cetera, et cetera. Which
Yeah.
is so interesting to me from an editing perspective, because sure, we got people saying in this episode after Camilla won that, hey, yeah, Mitch is a threat. We should just get rid of him. It's best for our games if we cut him. And we've been getting that, Mitch is a threat thing for the past few episodes. But at the same time, we've seen absolutely nothing to back it up. He's been on the wrong side of boats, and he really hasn't done anything except tell silly stories about how he works as a mailman.
Yeah. I think I think like my thing was it was really weird because when it was the split tribal, we had that segment that really was like basically setting out both him and Shaheen of
Yeah.
if they win or if they don't go home here, they can and will win the game.
Yeah. That's
And
definitely what it
then
felt like. Yeah.
because that was like the sympathies from the people that are like why they wanted to vote them. And then all of a sudden, like Shaheen just goes back to the big alliance, and he kind of is wishy washy about flipping. And then Mitch is painted as like this great stopper of like guy who wants to make a move but doesn't want to make it at the right time. And then once he wants to make it, it's too late.
Yeah.
But apparently, according to exit interviews, there was other people doing more um, sabotage that really broke up the lower numbers than he was painted to have been doing.
Yeah, yeah, it's certainly really interesting in that regard, because like immediately as soon as we're in the finale, just the very basis of the importance of who wins immunity and who the target is immediately like contradicted by what people are saying post game. And I know a lot of those are post game interviews, and a lot of people are probably lying to say that they knew more that was going on than actually they did. But
Yeah.
I mean, if everybody's saying the same thing, something's up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, so Camilla wins and
Mm-hmm.
Mitch is on the bottom. And instead of, this is what was interesting to me, is that Joe goes to Mitch and he's like, "Hey, I'm voting you out." Or no, Kyle goes to Mitch and is like, "Hey, I'm voting you out." And that's one thing. And the other thing to me is that Mitch just doesn't do pretty much anything to stop it. I mean, I was like sitting watching the finale and I was like, what is going on? Why is this guy not doing anything? Like, this is the time where you lock in. This is the time where you actually try to make moves.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
We're back.
Yeah. They're moving around.
Yeah, I'm in a classroom in my college right now. Uh the lights turned off on me. Oops. Uh
That'll happen, I bet, a few times while we're doing this.
but it is interesting because I don't know, I don't know what you know more, but like it did kind of seem like Mitch lacked that clutch factor. But maybe it's not even just lacking it, more of just knowing, well, if we couldn't stop them now, and they're coming to me now saying they're gonna vote me out, I am just chopped. Because if you
Yeah,
have that point where it's like if Camilla is coming to you, the person, one of the two people you are hinging on being able to flip on you or flip with you, are saying, "Look, we got a Final Four to you. You're done."
Yeah, sucks. Yeah.
I there's a point where you can fight, but there's also a point where it is just probably better for yourself to say, "Well, I guess I'll enjoy the last day in the sun."
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I guess you're right, but there's a part of myself that would be like, I would have to play every angle possible. But at the same time,
Yeah.
like these people have been around 24/7. Like it's very clear, at least that Eva and Joe are unbreakable, and
Hmm.
that if Camilla, who I guess was Mitch's number one, at least in his eyes, is saying we're gonna boot you out, that it's probably over.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think he still maybe should have tried a little harder, maybe. But that's
Yeah.
okay. Um,
I agree with that.
Either way, that basically recaps a full hour of television, what we just talked about. Of the 3 hour finale, that is a solid third of it. And ooh boy, did it feel like a whole lot of nothing. Um, I gotta say though, from here on, in my opinion,
Picks up.
that it picks up. Like I think, in my opinion, the finale as a whole lands on its feet and does a good job at wrapping a bow on this season, which has been anything but nice and tidy. It's been very
Hmm.
chaotic in terms of how we feel about it, the audience. But I think this finale was good, and I think it really starts to pick up here when we actually get to Final Four.
Hmm. I mean,
It's
yeah, here's when we're first with like the first ramification of like, okay, this group now actually has to turn on itself. You have pairs that may, this is a, you have people who basically have to say, this is my last opportunity to do something. This is the last opportunity to do something. Um, and we see Kyle face that.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, when it comes to this sort of soda can, as you put it, like being shaken around, this is the point where it's like, all right, there's literally nothing we can do to shake this any further. It is the
Hmm.
next person who touches this, the soda can will explode in front of everybody's face. It's like Bowser's Big Blast, like it's
Yep.
it's, it's someone's gonna lose. It's just a matter of
who's
time.
who's hitting the pink lever? We
Yeah,
don't know.
exactly. Uh-huh. And so this is the point, like, and it matters a lot in many ways who wins immunity. From my
Hmm.
perception, watching the episode, I was like, okay, basically, no matter who wins, Eva is gonna be taken to final three. Because to me, it's like, all right, if Joe wins, he takes Eva. Eva wins, she's not putting herself in fire. And then Camilla says to Kyle that, hey, by the way, I am going against you here. Like, I am not taking you to the end no matter what. Which seemed,
Hmm.
I was surprised that she said it before the challenge actually happened.
Yeah.
But I felt like it only opened up room for Kyle to be able to say to his number one ally, oh, yeah, by the way, yeah, I'll throw you in fire if I win too, um, in my
Hmm.
opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like, yeah, that's like Camilla giving herself a chance, obviously, of being like, look, like, just so you know, like, this is a possibility. So it's not as much of a blind side, but
Yeah.
like, it felt like a weird move. I don't think it was negative for Kyle. I feel like Kyle was probably going to consider it either way. Like it was the right move for Kyle and Camilla to both make, I think, is to do that. I was really hoping, because again, I wasn't like as clued into the jury's whole perception of Joe, but I was really hoping that he would just, last minute be like, all right, so, how I like, all that loyalty, we've been playing dishonest games.
Yeah.
Last part of my dishonest game is I'm tossing Joe in there. He had no time to prep. Go fuck yourself, dude. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
hop in this, and then like some sort of like blind side to really be that last moment. But like it really felt like that was my dream, my headcanon for what was going to happen. Obviously not the case. But I still think he did things correctly and kind of played probably his optimal win condition.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Well, first of all, the challenge itself is Samotion, a classic.
Yep.
Jeff even says so, and I gotta say, it is extremely tense. Like it is like even I know that it's a challenge we've seen a lot, and maybe the novelty sort of worn off over time, but it really was so good. It really shows why it's such a great challenge.
I think
In my
it's
opinion.
probably it's up there for best challenge in Survivor history. I'll
Yeah,
say, you know what? Screw hands on a hard idol. Maybe it's just because I've never seen it, but at the end of the day, that has more stagnant time for everybody involved. I can see why, from a production view, you don't want to have that.
yeah,
That being said, Simotion is something that is simultaneously dynamic and tense and endurance based. It is everything you could want out of that challenge because you're testing their dexterity, their focus, and there's always a moving part to have the camera on without it feeling too busy.
yeah. And no, yeah, it's also not boring. Like it's a challenge that can take as long or as short as possible. But like we see a million Survivor endurance challenges where it feels like people are just standing there holding something, and that's what they're like for like 7 minutes.
Yeah,
And there's nothing really dynamic, and then all of a sudden they'll step off the platform. Joey, you're out. But here
yeah,
it's like it's actually interesting to watch, and I don't know, it's tense. Like I do like those old Survivor challenges where it's like, okay, we're gonna just be here for 8 hours, and we'll stop when you stop. But at the same time, like you're right, it's not good from a production standpoint, and it leads to situations like Survivor Palau where you're on a thing for 12 hours, and all of a sudden where they're like, fuck, it's too late to go to tribal council. Or can you just like vote Ian out already? Like, can we go to sleep? You know. So
yeah.
I get it. Yeah. Anyways, so Submotion, very fun challenge. Kyle ends up winning, which is huge for him.
Mhm.
To me, when I saw Kyle win this, I honestly thought the game was locked up for him. Like at that point, I had to think
Mhm.
about it a little more, and then I changed my mind. And I was like, well, actually, Joe still has a big shot, and Camilla still has a big shot.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was like, oh, Kyle wins because he's just going to send Eva in fire, and then he goes up against Joe and Eva, and he wins. Because I had assumed that he was going to send Joe into fire, and since Joe's like a fire captain, that he would easily beat Camilla. I just assumed that was going to happen, but
Yep.
no, that's not what happened at all.
I Yeah, actually, hold on. I'm gonna hold on to this when we actually get the FTC, but it like opened up something in my head because I was thinking about like the line of like, why would he take Joe? And the
Yeah,
thought of like, you shouldn't try to beat someone else at their own game. Um, but
yeah,
obviously, because like him taking Joe to me, that's like, okay, he's doing the loyalty move. But I think, yeah, it's smart to not pick Joe. For the sheer reason of like, I think he's so much more powerful on the jury. Like if he's going to lose, he's more powerful on the jury and going to be intensely advocating for Eva
yeah. That's true.
more than probably more than Eva would for him.
Yeah,
Not to say that Eva wouldn't, but like we know Joe's a very charismatic man, and that layer of him like being like, hey, look, she's played really good, laying into it. He would be what Camilla was to Kyle at FTC.
with the knowledge that like Eva was not as much of a goat as certainly the fans thought,
Mm-hmm.
um, it makes it interesting to think about like, okay, were Kyle and Camilla actually very right in saying that we can't vote out either because then advocating for the other on the jury would be enough to put a nail in our coffins collectively because that's essentially what happens
Mm-hmm.
to Joe and Eva when one person of the Kyle Camilla duo gets to be on the jury is
Yeah,
that advocation for Kyle essentially wins him the game.
I think it at the end this like train of thought basically comes down to the main idea of why majority alliances need to be so tight and so well run. Because if you're in a position like any of this four, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you are say Joe and Eva, to talk about it, really, there's no winning configuration for them aside from maybe Shaheen.
Yeah.
But I don't even know if he can do that. And even to that, like, they can't take Mitch. They probably can't take Star. They probably can't take Mary. David? And
Yeah.
that's final eight. So you're telling me these people basically lost by like final eight. And that's wild to consider, right? In retrospect, it's like, or wait, was David final eight?
I think it's final eight. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
right.
then well, wait,
Or
it was
final
Chrissy
nine.
before.
Final
Yeah,
nine.
he was final nine.
Yeah.
And then before him, obviously, it's like it's a weird thing of like they basically lost at that final nine vote. And that's what playing into an alliance that rigidly, right? You're going to piss people off. Everyone else does this, and they basically utilize that in a way that sets up, hey, look, if you let anyone you try to bring as a goat, they probably have more win equity than you because everyone wants them to win instead of the alliance to fuck them over.
Yeah.
And then if you have that pair, you might just be chopped if you don't cut your partner. And it's hard to do that.
It feels surprising to be like, oh man, well, Mitch actually had a lot of win equity, or Mary had a lot of win equity, but it also makes sense when you think about like who was going home before them. It was Charity and Chrissy and Say and Cedric and Star, like, and David. These were people who were the goats of the season. They would have been the goats on other seasons, and we knew that when they went home.
Yeah.
But it's just the way the edit came out, or maybe just the perception of the fans being like Joe and Eva are the only threats, or whatever. But it just didn't feel that way. It didn't feel like Mitch had a chance to win. Didn't really feel like a lot of players had a chance to win. Like Shaheen is the only one that's like, okay, that's a guy who could have won. Everybody else who went before him is like, okay, well, this is just another person who had no shot at winning.
I mean, we talked about it when the season was airing, and through all of it, there was a lot of points where he said nobody who could have won, like the best players aren't gone yet. There isn't someone who's in like that pantheon of like this is a good Survivor player, like a real plug and play. Like you put him into another season, except for maybe Thomas. There's none of those plug and play players really went home until like right before the finale. Like Shaheen was the first one I'd say would probably get it. Mary maybe was one of them too, but and Lauren was probably actually Star even, but like David's kind of that threshold of like up until when he goes home. None of those players have really gone home, and no one's gone home in an interesting way, really, because it's like of people really playing out of their gourd that we saw.
Yeah, it's weird because there's such a big like there's a lot of conversation as we keep talking about like edit versus reality, and reality is saying that like people like Mary and people like Mitch and people like Star were way bigger like strategic personalities, which would imply that like theoretically I should be able to see them doing well on another season. But like what we got on television was the opposite. The most we got from Star was from her boot episode where she decided to start rapping. And like I'm still bitter at her for that. Why did they do that? Why did she do that? But
she kind of cooked though. That was a banger. I was listening to that while working. And so when you're rolling yoga mats and you just hear ooh, my enemies are plotting, it's a lot better than just standard gym fare.
You and I are different people. Anyways. But anyways, my whole point is that like, in most other seasons, especially in the new era, like could I see somebody who maybe is like a fallen angel or something like that? Somebody who like Kelly from Survivor 45. Can I see her doing well on a Survivor 44 or 43 or 46? Of course I can. I could see her winning. I could see Caleb from 45 winning. I could even see Kane Fritzler winning. I could see most new era players because they give
write that one down. Someone write that one down. That is I've never considered the thought experiment of is Kane Fritzler a good player because I immediately forgot about him. But Kane Fritzler is someone we need to talk about in more detail in the future. I hope he can.
One of these days we'll get there. Yeah. But my point is essentially that like most players, especially ones who get to the merge, we get some amount of strategic insight on, and we get some little tiny bit of information to convey that, okay, this person has a sense of what's going on in the game and knows how to manipulate people or knows how to be a good social player or something. But we just did not get that with most of the people that went home in the season post merge. We did not get that from Star. The most we got that from Mary was her forcing herself into this alliance, and then people being like, "Why is Mary here?" And then getting rid of David. We had David being right on the read about Shine and Kyle flipping, but being wrong about everything else and like paranoiing himself out of the game. Chrissy, I mean, she was like, we didn't get anything from her until basically the tribal council. She went home, it feels like. And
Yeah.
Charity, we definitely did not get anything good from her from the edit. So,
Yeah.
you know, I don't have that feeling that I might about even other players who made the merge who might not be good. Like, I have more faith in Rome getting far in the game than I do with Charity. Like, legitimately. Like, we got
Yeah.
more strategic insight from Rome than we did from most of the people who went home post merge in this season. So, put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Yeah. But I would say I have a deep soft spot in my heart for every Canadian player. Well, most Canadian players.
Yeah,
Drea's
there's
something nice.
always an exception to the rule, I guess.
Yeah, it's Drea and potentially the Canadian guy from 49, but we'll talk about that eventually.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, Kyle wins this immunity challenge, and he has the power to put whoever he wants into the spots, the fire making challenge, and he's already decided that it's going to be Camilla, and he
Yeah.
then decides that, okay, you know what, let's have Eva do it, and
Mhm.
Eva is practicing and she's doing it and she's really struggling, and then Kyle was like, "Are you sure you want to do this? Like, I can just put Joe in instead," and Eva's
Yeah.
like, "No." Which I respect. I appreciated that. Though it was still kind of surprising the events that led us here, in my opinion, of putting Eva in there at all instead of Joe.
Mhm.
And I know we already kind of talked about that, but I don't know. It feels like there would be no real reason why Kyle would want to put Joe. I guess it's just his undying loyalty to him. I guess he really wanted to play the loyalty card at Final Tribal Council, but I feel like it's more
Yeah.
Joe's card than Kyle's card.
Well, I think also if you never betray Joe at the end,
Mm-hmm.
you never signal to him that your plan to win and what you think is going to get the win is that more underhanded game.
Yeah.
He doesn't have any time to adapt if he does suck it out, because if you betray Joe at the end and he goes in a fire, he comes out victorious. Now he is here saying, I have defeated by my hand the being disloyal. I am here. You could not get me out. Your attempt to do this sucked. Like, even if you tried to play the disloyal game, you were bad at it. And that weakens your own pitch. But bringing him has just saying, yes, we are all going to the end loyal. Then it's like that morning, Eva and Kyle go, hey, so there's a lot of stuff you don't know about us. And Joe goes, oh shit.
Yeah.
And so now Joe's immediately on the back foot, right? You play loyal until that last moment, and he's lost all momentum. You really have just like completely taken the wind out of his sails, strategically. And hi darkness.
I thought my video cut out for a second, but no, you just found yourself in the darkness again. But no, I think you're right. Like, for sure. Like, I think, yeah, you make a good point, and I didn't really consider that angle of it. It does make sense. It also kind of puts you on an even playing field with Joe, instead of him having that possibility to come out of it as punished Joe and potentially win over the jury. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because I think that was something a lot of people thought would happen in this season, right? It's like, oh, Eva has the title. They're going to have to get her out. She's going to go home.
Yeah.
Then punish Joe, who can't lose immunity challenges, is going to go on and win this season because we already think he's going to win. And that was like something a lot of people were thinking was going to happen here. And then it just doesn't. We never get Punish Joe.
Nope.
Um, and I think that's for the better winning chances of everybody except for Joe.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. And honestly, it's a very touching moment when Eva is like, I want to do this. You can help me, but this is my fight.
Yeah.
Especially, when it comes to the actual fire making challenge, which is probably the most like paranoid fire making challenge I've ever seen, where both of the people doing it, Eva and Camilla, are both like freaking out verbally the whole time. I loved it. Like it
Yeah.
was great. Because people are always so like calm and stoic. They're never talking. They're always like blah 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 or whatever.
Yeah. It's like
But
I
but
need to lock in. But it's fun to have someone who's walking in is just spouting stuff at the same time.
yeah, yeah. I also found it very interesting with Camilla specifically because like she knows she's going into fire making. She's known the whole time. And she has this confessional right beforehand about when I came here, I was the old Camilla. I was paranoid and negative, and now I'm the new Camilla, and I'm confident and sure of myself. And then as soon as she gets into this fire making challenge, she's immediately like, what's wrong with my flint? Oh, what's what very unhappy, shall we say.
Yeah.
And that is, I don't know, I'd like to think that that was on purpose by the editors, that you never know, of just
Yeah.
being like, a little bit of irony and showing maybe why her mentality in some ways may have been her demise at fire
Yeah.
making. I loved it.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good stuff. And Eva, of course, is going through her own struggles. She gets the fire
Mm-hmm.
very quickly, and it looks like, okay, this is going to be the easiest fire making challenge ever. And then it dies down, and she seems like on the verge of like a breakdown about it.
Yeah.
And like, whether it be because of Joe's words that we see in the edit, or because of her just being able to move on and go back to it, like she locks in, and she eventually wins fire making, eliminating Camilla and certifying her as our fallen angel of the season.
Yeah.
And Camilla, pretty freaking good fallen angel. She's probably up there as one of the
Yeah.
better ones I can think of. Like, to
No,
me, especially with the knowledge of how the season ends and how Kyle wins, it makes me think like, okay, I would take Camilla as like a better player than say a Jesse Lopez. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
Because she knew she didn't have to turn on her ally until fire making and did not.
Yeah.
While Jesse did that to Cody and left himself wide open to die, basically.
Yeah. Like she still had outs. I mean, fuck. She won immunity challenges. No hate to Jesse. No hate to Jesse. Personally, if I were him, I don't know what happened to his shoes. I would wear them if I were at an immunity challenge.
Yeah.
And yeah, he just kind of got dog walked by everybody else there in those challenges. And I mean that's like his biggest thing. But like Camilla kind of doesn't have that downside. And I think it's the thing that makes Kyle and Camilla both like really good. And I think what makes honestly one of the best Survivor players, you're pretty good at everything. But you're not but you're like if you had a stat sheet, it would be like sixes across the board.
Yeah.
That's really good. Like maybe you want like a 7 or an 8 in social. I mean, they all gotta have that. But at the end of the day, it's like if you are not so dominant in everything, but also not horrendously min-maxed, like you're going to do really well because most of the things that get people targeted is being a complete all-around threat or a threat at one specific capacity. Those are the main things that get people like really gotten rid of. And I mean, you see that downside with like again, that's the Jesse downside is he's too min-maxed. But like Camilla has some challengeability. Kyle has some pretty good challengeability, but they also were never like the best on their season.
Well, it's really interesting you bring that up because that's essentially what Kyle's pitch is at Final Tribal Council. Is he's like, I'm pretty good at everything. And that's something I noticed during the season is like, everybody was focusing on the challenge strength of Joe and David, who, has muscles on muscles on muscles on muscles. and even Eva, who won the immunity challenge, but like Kyle is still like ripped. He still
Yeah.
has like a six pack. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like on maybe an ordinary season, he would be the most fit person out on the beach. But since he has two superheroes or whatnot, he sort of gets put into that pretty good at challenges category. And at some point, I don't know if this is actually true, but I have to imagine part of it becomes like, okay, we need somebody to stop Joe since he keeps winning. Kyle is good at challenges too. So I think
Yeah.
that's probably part of it, maybe to some extent. But you're right. Kyle was very good socially, but he was pretty good at everything else, which I think really led him to being able to do so well in the game and really never really be targeted, aside from the one time
Mm-hmm.
where he was very much targeted and had to play the idol. But yeah.
I mean, I think this is also something that like happens to that is like a thing of most winners, at least in my perspective. There are obviously some that are more min-max than others, but like, I mean, we can kind of see the same thing with Rachel. I mean, yeah, Rachel was really good at challenges,
Yeah.
but and she did make the run when she needed to. There are still types of challenges that like she could have lost, but Kyle could basically do pretty well in most types of challenges. I mean, aside from like, I don't know, there's a couple out there, but like still, they most of those winners have, especially in the new era, they have that like flexibility, right? Because I mean, has there been a new era winner who hasn't won an immunity challenge?
Did Marianne win one?
Great question.
I don't think she did. I don't think
No.
Marianne won one.
So Marianne, but
I think
Kenzie
everybody
won.
else did
Kenzie
because
won. Yeah,
Kenzie did, Erica did, I think Yam Yam did.
yeah. Rachel won. D won for sure.
Yep.
Gabler won.
Gabler won.
Um,
Yeah, no, everybody
but
but
yeah,
Marianne. So
like I think it's like, yeah,
she's
and
the
no,
exception.
and the only person who really comped out was Rachel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
you're
so it's
right.
like, I think at the end of the day, it's like it is being a really balanced person that is going to help you get far and win.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
it's true. I'm trying to think of the last like actual winner who really comped out of their gourd, and I guess you have to go back to Ben,
but
because
Ben
I
didn't
mean,
even comp. Ben
but he
didn't even
didn't
win
even
it.
comp. He
Yeah,
just he
the
just
only guy
was
to win
safe.
an immunity challenge on that season was Cole Matters. Shout
Yeah,
outs.
yeah.
Um,
So I mean, maybe Chris Underwood if you count that, but I wouldn't.
I
Um,
wouldn't count that either.
yeah.
I
So
mean,
you'd have to go
it's
way back.
probably Mike Holloway, but
Yeah, it's probably, yeah, I think it is Mike Holloway. I think really only him, Fabio, Tom Westman, like
yeah,
maybe Kim Spradlin, like if you count, but like those are like the only people that have really comped out and won. Like
yeah,
it's not very many people. I'm sure
no,
I'm missing one or two, like Boston Rob, but yeah, it's not very common. So
no,
I mean, shouts out to Kyle. He did well at like most challenges too. It's just that
hmm
got beaten out by the fire captain most of the time. So
yeah. But I think I was also thinking about this when I was talking about Joe being off his game. We can kind of use this to segue into like FTC.
mhm.
Um, when we had that segment of Joe during the Shaheen elimination of him really being out of it, right? There's
Yeah,
him and he's foggy and Shaheen's talking, and then Kyle's talking and it's going back and forth between them and Joe's just like trying to parse it. We see it initially when you look at it through the lens of like this is the final six episode and Joe is winning. It's like this is Joe's moment. He's like having trouble, but he's gonna figure it out. And then you realize that's kind of just them saying, "Hey, Joe's just out of touch. He's just confused."
yeah.
Like,
I I will say that is exactly how I took it. I did not. As soon as I saw that, I was like, "Oh, Joe's not winning." I never took it as, "Oh, this is him showing how he's going to rebound from this," because I was like, "This is final six. This is essentially the end of the season. Like,
mm-hmm,
and this is like everybody else has not had great times. You know, Kyle had some rough patches. Camilla's been in a weird spot, but nobody's really had anything specifically saying, okay, this person's not going to win. And then you get Joe, who the entire episode is basically going paranoid, despite him winning immunity and breaking off his bond with Cheyenne, something we apparently only saw a little of that was way bigger than we thought it was. And then we get that thing where his brain is like drowning out. I was like, okay, they're really gonna play up, if not now at Final Tribal Council, the fact that he was paranoid and he flipped on his allies for no reason. Which is funny because that didn't actually end up happening. We didn't get the Joe comeuppance. We didn't get David like mean mugging and saying, Joe, you betrayed me, or whatever.
Instead, we got the most awesome knock-knock joke of all time.
I guess. I do want to talk about that because I don't. So David at Final Tribal Council, he's had this stern look on his face the entire season. I put a few thumbnails of it in these podcasts. You know, he's mean mugging, and then he's like, knock knock. It's just me. I was just kidding. Big jokes, big jokes. I don't. What do you think about this? Because I don't really.
I think it's good. I think it's good. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I've played a lot of orgs. I mean, we've seen a lot of FTCs, whether it's through those, and those get heated, which is crazy because it's Discord Survivor. But also, really we've seen like regular Survivor. A lot of people get. I mean, the classic moments of how does this resonate with you in the bedroom, and all that stuff. There's a lot of people who, or even Corinne from Gamone comes to mind. Like, people take that shit seriously. It is a tense moment. You are arguing for $1 million, and at the end of the day, it is still a game for $1 million. And there are a lot of positions where you, as a juror, you are someone who's been pissed off. You've been voted out of the game. You no longer have a chance to get $1 million. And this is your last chance to have, you now have power. You've been given power after being done wrong. And most people go on a power trip. I would much rather see one Joe a season through like people, because like I think it was a good balance, right? Chrissy was doing her like, only one of you can win, pause. And other people were doing their own application, but having just one guy like David going, hey guys, I had you. It's like, okay, it adds levity. It brings people over, and I think it can, even in a lot of ways, help people at FTC perform better. And so I'm not opposed to if say there was one person per season who did that. It's like that's good to me. I'd rather have someone make the vibes a little better there than actively try to just make someone crash out.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. It's just interesting because, you know, David does that, but we don't really get his thoughts on like usual. I don't even think he asked a question. He basically just goes, "Hey, it's me, David," and I'm sure he did ask a question actually in the show if it didn't actually make the, if not actually making the edit. But it's interesting because, you know, we got a lot of questions from very specific people. Like we got a lot of Chrissy at Final Tribal Council. There are other people like, I don't know what Cedric was thinking, you know, at Final Tribal Council, you know. I wanted to know more about each person's perception of the game, which is sort of what we got, you know, in the going in of like, this person's going to have to say this to me, which we get a lot of times in these seasons.
But, which, by the way, love that segment. Love the jury segment before FTC.
Love it.
Good segment. Always great addition to the show. Have your hate on the new era. Very, very good segment. Has added a lot to the show and how FTC is done.
Yes, I agree with that. It also, as an audience, like lets you know, okay, this is what I should be looking for from Joe. He should be owning up to his mistakes, and if he doesn't do that, Eva should be saying this, and Kyle should be doing this. Blah blah blah. Let's talk about Final Tribal Council because, you know, it exists. It happens. I mean, quite honestly, me, Joey Olberding, like going into this, I'm like, okay, how much is Kyle gonna win by? That's how I was feeling. But I know other people were thinking differently. Some people were thinking Joe was gonna win. Like I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts were, if anything.
We had our first new era FTC where everyone got a vote. Shout outs.
Yep.
That's sick. First of all, I think Kyle did a good job, but it felt like a very weird FTC because it was crunch for time. I think if the Mitch part of the episode was a little shorter, it would probably maybe had more time to explain things. But it's either that or like, because for me it was like, okay, why? There was opportunity, there was questions asked, or I was like, this is a great time for Kyle to bring up his alliance with Camilla. This is a great time for this and for that, but we didn't see it, and I was like, this is weird. Is Kyle fumbling?
Yeah.
Pause. But obviously he did well. He did a good job. And it's led me to what I think is like the secret cheat code of FTCs.
Yeah. Tell me. I would love to
Have
know.
a secret. That's it. Have a secret.
Yeah.
That is it.
No, it's true.
If you have any point in the game where you can say to one of your people at FTC, pause. Someone from the jury would like to corroborate my information, or I would like to bring up actual evidence of you being wrong and me being right, and me having something you didn't know about. You just mog everybody else. I mean, look, Marianne did it, Dee did it, Kyle did it, and at the exact moment you can see this is why this person won. I mean,
yeah,
there is so much there where it's like when that happens, you have these moments where it's like, yes, here's how we go, and this is why this person has lost, and why this person wins, and like having that one tiny secret, again with some way to have evidence for it, will absolutely lock you in.
I love that you mentioned that because secrets were definitely a big deal in this final tribal council, but like people always say that the origin of this is Marianne, and to an extent she is in terms of people doing this as a winner. But as a concept, having a secret that you've kept onto the whole game is not new. I mean, Jeremy and Adam both had their secrets in the 30s. Theirs were much more personal. My wife is pregnant, or my mom died right before I came out here, or whatever else. But like those are secrets that affect the jury, and they work. And you don't even just have to win to have a secret that affects the jury. You want to go to an obscure one, go to Island of the Idols, and go to DK Chillin, Dean pulling out at Final Tribal Council, his scroll for the choose your advantage or whatever it is, and being like, I held on to this the whole time and I didn't have to play it. And the jury being wowed and being like, oh my God, is Dean actually a really good player? Until Jamal is like, oh, that's not real. That's fake. And then it's like, darn it. But like it works for a second. And Marianne did that. And 42 is a really interesting comparison here because essentially not just Kyle, but Eva, they play the role of the Mariannes here. And Joe is the role of the Mike Turner, where he is this loyalty-infused strategic player, but very loyal, older gentleman fire cap who essentially has nothing to rebut that. Like he seems to be a very powerful player going in as well, but it's like that secret sort of flips things on its head and shows, okay, this person's not as aware as we all thought he was. Versus, I mean, Kyle, who certainly was able to use his secret well, and Eva, who used her secret well too, even though it was way less of a big thing gameplay wise. You know what I mean?
If I had a nickel for every time a person of color in the new era from an orange tribe beat a male fire captain in his older male fire captain at FTC, I'd have 2 nickels.
Not a lot, but it is weird.
No,
it happens twice.
Yeah. Which also specifically that guy couldn't admit to playing a game that the jury wanted him to admit to. That is also huge. And so it is weird. There's a lot of 42 parallels in how this turned out. I expected this to be more of a Joe bashing.
Yeah, me too.
Which might lead us into another point of topic if you want to move from this. But it feels like the edit was protecting Joe. And why would you protect someone this tightly on a 48 season? I mean, obviously you have like a lot of like he's a good guy. And you can just have a positive edit of someone. But you could also have we want to see this guy come back for 50.
Yeah.
We got a returnee season coming up in 2. This guy, we like him a lot. he's a pretty good guy overall. He's got a good story. Maybe we'll just keep people liking him and run him back.
Well, I do want to say I agree with that. We are going to get eventually to my personal predictions of who I think will be on Survivor 50. And Joe will be there. Spoiler alert, blah blah blah. Um but beyond that, I think there are other reasons too why like this happened. Why Joe and Eva felt such like a protected edit. It felt like no bad things shall say, even though people found a way to hate on Eva a lot, anyways. But like think about it, just like the very moment that they had, the moment of the season, regardless of this finale, is the Joe and Eva moment in the pre-merge. Them, him helping her out, during her breakdown or her episode, as she called it.
Yeah.
And that's the moment of the season. It's the moment that made Jeff cry. If you don't think the editors were aware of that and wanted to paint the two people who had this beautiful, wholesome moment as being wholesome and, being there for each other through thick and thin, then I just don't know. I think they wanted them to have the strongest edit because they had the strongest moment of the season. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's weird because when you have a moment like that, right? In most cases, the story of the season is actually no. This makes a lot of sense because ultimately, at the end of the day, when they make a season, most of the time you think, okay, it's how does someone win? How does someone lose? This is just the story of hey, Joe and Eva played Survivor together.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the story this season, and I think obviously, not to say it's not compelling, but it's a lot less compelling than why did X win? Why did X lose? And you had these moments of like, okay, this is why Joe and Eva lost because Kyle, like, it wasn't okay. Why did Kyle win? Oh, Kyle win because he brought Joe and Eva, and people didn't like Joe and Eva. That's not the story. Joe and Eva lost because of Kyle.
Yeah. Yep.
Because Kyle was still there, and because Kyle did some other stuff. But that's just kind of not the point of the season. The point of the season, at least narratively, it wasn't inherently that like Kyle won or like Kyle won. Kyle played a good game. The story was though, hey, Joe and Eva did this.
Exactly. This may seem like a weird comparison, but I want to compare Joe and Eva's moment to once again Island of the Idols. Second time I bring that up, and it's interesting because I think about this is a very positive moment. The Joe and Eva moment. This is the peak of Survivor. They want to promote this, and this is a moment that will be talked about nationally. Versus something like the Dan stuff, or even in Game Changers, the Varn or Zeke stuff, where it's like this is something that Survivor does not want to talk about, but it's going to be out there. And that contrast the Survivor's response to the Island of the Idols stuff, where it's like we will put this in the show, but we will make the actual moment of ejecting Dan from the game as nondescript and as nothing as possible. And it's just it's almost going to pretend like we're just going to throw it aside and say like, yeah, we got rid of him, like let's just move on, versus what it feels like the response to the moment of Joe and Eva was this season, which is yes, we are going to parade this moment around. We are going to make this moment the focus on the edit. We want the season to revolve around this moment. They even here's another reason I knew Joe was going to lose. This past week before the finale aired, they had Joe and Eva going on like Good Morning America and stuff like that to talk about their moment before the finale aired. So if that's not proof by itself that this is what the editors wanted, like they wanted a top 10 season and thought they had a top 10 season because they had this moment to revolve the game around, then there's your proof. The problem is that they revolve the entire game around this moment between two players who essentially at the end of the day were just two players in the game and everybody else got cast aside, it felt like.
Yeah. And not to mention that happened in the pre-merge.
Yep.
And there was simply so much more game that did in a lot of situations revolve around them. They kept the camera on the sun and not at the planets.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was what makes things like less interesting, right? Is because while you have this focal point, that is kind of stationary through the whole season and is still doing stuff. The moving pieces, most of the solar system is going boom, 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 boom around it. And while this is great, it's good, it's bringing a lot to the season. You're missing so much of the story if all you see is Venus flying around in the back of the screen.
Yep. I know we just talked about the comparisons to 42, but like easily the season that 48 feels the most like to me is 41, where we have the edit focused on somebody who just is not the focal point of the game. Like 41 is all focused on Xander. Really, it's focused on the advantages, but since Xander has all the advantages, it's focused on Xander. And the entire game, it's like, oh man, the edit is so focused on Xander. The edit is so focused on Joe. They're going to do so well in the game. And then once, Shaheen or Ricard goes out, it's like, okay, this player's definitely winning. And then we get to Final Tribal Council, and it's not quite as bad as 41 was in this regard. I'll be fair, but all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, they didn't even have a chance. Like they had no shot whatsoever. And this other person won way easier. In fact, the third person, who I didn't think would get a vote at all, got more votes than the guy I thought was going to win, in this case being Deshaun and Eva over Xander and Joe.
Yeah, I absolutely agree on that.
Yeah. It's weird because there are a lot of differences. Like 41 is extremely advantage focused. Like it's probably the most advantage focused season, even more than
it's three people. Or it's three things. It's the advantages, it's Xander, and it's Shan. You can't forget Shan in the conversation about what makes 41 41. Because she is such a focal point. But like she kind of fits into that section of like, sometimes Survivor spends a lot of time telling us about characters who can be compelling and are very interesting, but like at the end of the day should not have this dominance of the camera and of the screen time if we want to tell a cohesive thing about what's happening at that time. And if we cut one or two Shan confessionals to put a Heather confessional in there, I think people will be pretty happy. If we cut one or two Banu confessionals to put confessional from anybody else in, we'd probably be pretty happy. No hate to Rome, same thing. No hate to Say, same thing. We have people who get these incredibly bloated edits for ultimately in the like. Shan makes sense because Shan was kind of the focal point of season 1.
Sure.
Or season 41. But like there are other people where it's like they are taking up so much and ultimately at the end of the day mean so little to the overall narratives of the season, where it's like we could have done a little better setting up some people and balancing it a little better. And I don't blame those people at all for it because they're interesting TV. It's not their fault that the camera stuck to them because that's why they're on the show. They should be interesting and they should be fun to watch. It's just you have to balance people who are the stars of the show with the people who matter.
Yeah, no, you make a great point, Sunder. I think especially I love how you brought up Say in this regard, because it's like so many of the problems of the edit seem to be like, okay, we're so focused on two people, but it's like we were still only focused on like two people before the Joe and Eva moment happens. Like even still, like in episode 1, Say had a record like 27 confessionals. And for what? Her tribe kept losing, but we could have used so much more of that time to build up, say, Mitch as somebody who people were like aware of and were like, okay, this guy is playing the game, or Star as a more strategic force instead of just kind of sitting around, which is what we got. There was a lot more that could have been done there, but it's interesting because the 90 minutes, as like something new, was sort of meant to counteract some of the problems with the early New Era seasons like 41, or even like 44 or 43, where it's like 44 was super focused on Carolyn and Yam Yam, which was probably cool, I guess. Maybe, I mean, if you're like about that. I hate 41, but like that's just me. But even still, like so much of Carolyn versus Yang Yang's perception was lost, since we were getting all three of their insights and not really the insight of anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, it makes a lot of sense, right? It's when you have that balance of like, okay, we have the stars, we have the story, but at the end of the day, they aren't the story.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And so it makes me wonder, like, why did Say get so many confessionals at the end of the day? Like, she's entertaining, sure, but
yeah. But in our retrospective other seasons, let's go to talking about other seasons. You said you had some homework for me, or that you did.
I did.
I feel like now is a good point to dip into that, unless you have anything more you would like to say about this season as a whole.
I mean, I would love to talk a little bit more about Final Tribal Council itself.
Yeah,
I would love
go
to
into that first.
I would love to talk about the actual moment where Final Tribal Council sort of gets flipped on its head, because Joe is kind of out of the running. We really don't even get like any questions addressed to Joe, which once again goes to the protection sort of thing that we're putting out there. But Eva's doing well, and then she mentions, how she knew what was going on with the Shaheen vote, and she knew that he was flipping, and then Camilla says it's time to Kyle, and they spill the beans about everything, and everything gets flipped on its head, and that is a first, like truly a first. Because we've had people campaign hard for people on the jury before. I think about Tiffany in 46 campaigning extremely hard for Kenzie, like cutting people off with their answers so Kenzie could get more time to speak or whatever else.
Yeah. Or even thinking about like in old formats, the Spencer speech from Kagiyan.
Yes.
It's a classic.
Yeah. No,
or Snakes and Rats.
Great.
I mean,
yeah, great. Yeah, absolutely. It goes back to the beginning of Survivor history. But I've never seen somebody legitimately actually win the game for somebody at Final Tribal Council for somebody else. But it feels like, at least based on what we see on television, that's what happened with Camilla. Like, Kyle was kind of being weird, kind of treading water, like not really saying all that much. Like, his big thing was, oh yeah, by the way, I'm a lawyer and I was incarcerated, which, like, sure, no problem with going for the Adams story, no problem going for the here's my big secret I've been holding on to. Like, that's fine. I'm not against that. But it can't be your only thing, especially when you have that strategic move. And then Camilla pops in and is like, by the way, I was in this guy's secret alliance, and by the way, we pulled off the move against Shaheen. Yeah, I'm pretty cool, and Kyle's pretty cool too. So I think you should vote for him. Yeah, I loved it. It was great.
Yeah, it was really cool. It questions to me whether or not Kyle had just not jumped on it yet, or whether or not it was like, because I feel like that is something that going to FTC, I was like, this is something you need to pitch. This is your story. This is your move. This is the story of the season. And it's like, when is Kyle going to bring this up? And it was interesting to see that the only time it happened was when it was literally basically beckoned on by Camilla to say, hey, look, say it now. Even though there was like moments in FTC where I was like, why isn't he saying it now? And I think, not to put words like thoughts into his head that may or may not have happened, but I know one thing about FTC is you can make claims, but everything you say ultimately at the end of the day is to win votes, and you can say stuff that loses them.
Yeah.
And there obviously is that chance of Kyle being like, well, actually we smoked so much crack, we got you out, Shaheen. Would that be a thing that would push Shaheen away? And I wonder if it was Kyle saying, or like, maybe Kyle and Camilla had a conversation about it, like, hey, so when we bring up this move, like, let's be real. Because I would not be surprised if they did FTC prep for each other before Camilla went home.
Sure. Yeah.
But
that wouldn't be crazy, I don't think, at all, especially if they're knowledgeable of like only one of us should go to the ends and we should not face off against each other. I think that makes sense. I did think it was interesting because apparently I was reading up on this, that this Final Tribal Council was the longest in the new era, even longer than 43 with Gabler's word salad that won in the game. Like, this is the longest. And that's especially interesting to me because it's not like Kyle was talking a lot about his move and eventually won the game in a landslide. everybody still got a vote. You know,
Yeah.
it must have been a very close tribal council, and I'm sure that like Joe made good points, maybe not great points, but like he made pretty good points. I'm sure Eva made great points
Mm-hmm.
because like we were all thinking she was going to be a goat, and then she winds up with 2 votes. And
Yeah.
you know, I think it's interesting. I legitimately, because I really do think Eva made a great case for herself. I loved actually both of their pitches, especially at the end when it was like, why should you vote for me? I loved Eva being like, this is an unprecedented season, so you should vote for an unprecedented winner. I love that. That's a
Yeah.
great line. I think that won her a vote or two. I really do. Like that was great.
Mm-hmm.
But I also loved Kyle being like, let me be the representative of this season. I
Mm-hmm.
I love both so much. I don't know which line I liked more. Like they were both like 10 out of 10s.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I thought it was great, and I think that was really the nail in everybody else's coffin was Kyle using his lawyer prowess to convince people of that. You know.
I love in the season 48 finale when Kyle reveals that he's a lawyer and then he lawyers all over everybody.
Yep. It's
And he
as
says
simple as
it's a
that.
lawyer in time. Uh,
Yeah. But that was very fun. I want to say just a bit of my one saving grace is going into the finale voting. I said that Kyle would win 5-2 to 1 with Eva getting the 2 votes, and I was right. So
that's
I feel
crazy.
pretty good about. No, I saw Eva. Well, here's the thing.
How
I've been an Eva
the
defender
okay,
the whole season.
Eva
So
2 is not weird to me. The Joe 1, predicting the Joe 1 is the weird part to me.
look, I figured that I don't know. I just felt it in my bones. I can't explain it, but you know,
Yep.
I thought it would have been weird if Joe had gotten 0 votes after everything we've seen from him. Though I guess with the knowledge, thinking about other New Era seasons wouldn't have been that weird because like who got the most positive air edit from 44? Carolyn. Did Carolyn get any votes? No.
No.
Who got the most positive edit in 41? Xander. Did Xander get any votes? No. So I guess it wouldn't have been that weird, but like I don't know. Deep within my soul, I was like, I feel it. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know.
All right,
Um,
I'll take it.
yeah. But no, I thought it was a very fun ending. Like I think Kyle is. I mean, we'll get there, but I think he definitely deserved to win. He played a very solid game, very solid on all facets. I think Eva would have been a solid winner, you know, had we gotten there. I think that Shaheen move really pushed things in the direction because like I would just think about like if they didn't make that move and it was still Kyle, Eva, and Joe at the end, and Kyle didn't have that piece of strategic insight that Eva and Joe didn't have, like would he
Yeah.
still win? I don't know. I don't. In fact, I'm not sure he would. I think it'd be way closer, if nothing
Yeah,
else.
it becomes a much harder sell. But just
Yeah,
having something you can say, look, I played the people next to me, it gets you there.
yeah.
We already went over this.
And I was really hoping that maybe Eva would pull out the fact of like, okay, yeah, Kyle had this secret alliance with Camilla, and he says that you know he's the strongest duo with Camilla. But at the end of the day, he decided not to sit here with Camilla. So how strong can that duo really be? Me and Joe were gonna stay by
Mm-hmm.
each other's sides the whole game. That's true loyalty. And I thought that would have been interesting if she brought that up because there
Yeah.
was this whole debate during this final tribal council of which duo is more powerful, essentially. And Eva said, well,
Yeah.
me and Joe are one of the strongest duos in Survivor history. And then Camilla being like, actually, check this out. You know,
Yeah.
but
Actually, we beat Shaheen to death with hammers. And so
yeah,
we're a stronger duo.
it's interesting though, because I don't think Eva's wrong at all. I think
Mm-hmm.
Eva and Joe have to be one of the most powerful duos in Survivor history. I think they have to be top 5. And I think Kyle and Camilla also have to be top 5. I don't think you have to put
This was
either
a season of
down.
duos. This was a season of duos.
I don't think you have to put either down because even like, you know, the greatest duos of our time, like JT and Steven, like if Steven had won that final immunity challenge in Token Jeans, he would have cut JT. So, you know,
Yeah.
Malcolm and Denise, like they agreed at Final Four that one of them had to go out. That's very similar to Kyle and Camilla, you know.
But wasn't it also like Dom and Wendell?
Dom and Wendell, that's a very good
Yeah.
one. Yeah, that's a
Like
very good
that's
one.
exactly it. Because if I'm not incorrect, Dom won the final immunity challenge,
Yes, I
and
believe
then
that's
sent
correct.
Wendell in. He brought
Yep.
Laurel. And yet we still see them as like one of the tightest duos of all time, even though they both had the ability to say, I need you to die.
Yeah. No, I mean the only like it really is so unique, Joe and Eva, because it's not even like one of them very obviously, it's not like one of them was clearly better at the game than the other. Like the season I have playing behind me is Blood versus Water. Spoilers for Survivor Blood versus Water, but Tyson and Jervis are a very tight duo throughout that
It's
game.
still only the pre-merge. Don't worry. We saw Colton go home earlier in this podcast.
Yeah,
Um,
he's awesome. Great
I
moment.
was like locked in. By the way, you were talking, and I was like, I don't know whether or not to interrupt
I've
you
been
and let
locked
you
in
know
too.
that
I've been locked in
that
too.
Colton is getting kicked out right now. This is the moment of the season.
Yeah. So if you're not watching on YouTube right now and you're listening to the podcast, trust me, you are missing out on some great content. I hope this drives up viewer engagement. Make sure to like and subscribe,
Yeah, please
etc.
comment. Please comment your favorite moment of the season behind Joey. Like, if you see something awesome, just go down there and say, "Oh my gosh, I love
Yeah.
Caleb. He's so great." And you're like,
Oh, we
"Yes,
love
I love
Caleb.
Caleb too. Caleb's great."
Yep. Yeah. Make sure to not comment about the season that we're talking about. Um,
Separate
anyways,
comments. Do multiple comments.
yeah. What were we talking about? I forgot. Talking about something about Eva. Oh yeah, duos. Yeah, duos. So
Yeah.
like the difference is like Tyson and Jervis. Like Jervis thought he was in the position where he was gonna win at the end, but he wasn't. But obviously, everybody perceived Tyson as being stronger in that duo. If Jervis had cut Tyson, then Jervis probably would have won. But even Joe were maybe in a similar circumstance where cutting the other and having that person on the jury supporting you would have helped you, but they stood by each other regardless and like didn't
Mm-hmm.
let that distract them. They didn't let the devil on
Yeah.
their shoulder whisper them to win the game or whatever. Which I would argue, despite it not resulting in either of them winning, is indicative of as much of a strong duo as Kyle and Camilla, if not more strong. Which I think is an
Yeah.
interesting debate, maybe.
Yeah. I agree. And I think even looking back at Blood vs. Water, it's another case study of the same things we had this season of like getting yourself into a position where the people outside of your alliance are inherently outside of your alliance and therefore jury threats against you, enough of them that you cannot make moves against the people who are higher up against you in your own alliance, and how
Yeah,
that can screw you over.
yeah,
So I think like especially that situation you're saying that, because even like right, Final Four, if Tyson doesn't win that, even if Tyson doesn't win that, if Tina doesn't win, she goes home.
yeah, yeah.
So it wasn't like that Final Four challenge wasn't about, oh, what if Monica or Jervis win. It was about if is it Tyson or is it Tina winning.
Yeah,
And that just shows that like even when you're in that position with your duo, it's like, can I do something? Can I do something about this right now? And sometimes you just get yourself into a position where you can't. Oops.
yeah. Um, Let me just ask you. I don't really have many other thoughts on this final tribal council. Do you have any others? Because like I feel like we
No.
talked about it
Yeah,
pretty
I
well.
I mean I proposed a segue earlier. We can move into your rankings and
Yeah,
your homework.
let's talk about the seasons now and where 48 places among the seasons. I'll ask you first since you don't have a big tier list like I do. Like where would you say this season stacks up among all the seasons or new era depending on how you feel?
New era, it's in the bottom half. All seasons, it's in the bottom half, but it's closer to the top of that bottom half. I haven't done any official lists on that, but I think like at least compared to new era, I think I know it's been a while since a lot of these. I think
Yeah.
it's worse than at least 3 or 4 seasons. So
Yeah.
I think, I mean, it's worse than 47 to me. It's worse than 45 to me. It's worse than 42. It's probably worse than like 46. Well,
Yeah.
um, and so that apparently puts it. I feel like it's comfortable in the 5 or the 6 slot. Sixth man of the year, Survivor 48.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. In fact, so much that I agree with your perception of what seasons it's better and worse than exactly. Let me share my thoughts here because essentially I don't think the comparisons with 41 just stop at the editing. I think it goes all the way towards where it ranks on this list that I have
Hmm.
pulled up now. Um, it's going to be kind of tough for you to see Sunder,
No,
but
I'm locking in. I'm liking this. I got a
48
good
is
view.
in D tier, right in between Survivor Nicaragua and Survivor 41. I have it as the third worst New Era season, right next to 41. I mean, frankly, they could be interchangeable in my eyes, and above 44, which, as I said about 10 minutes ago, is a season I hate. But it's firmly in the D tier. So it is, and to be clear, a C tier here, like middle of the pack, is still good. It's middle of the pack for Survivor seasons. So overall, I would say Survivor 48 is like an okay season of television and a below average season of Survivor,
Yeah.
which is also how I feel about Survivor 41. The differences being that 41 is a season that frustrates me because it just has so many stupid things happening in it. Like the do or die is so stupid. The drop the four, keep the one, so stupid. The hourglass
Drop
is
the
so
four. Drop the
dumb.
four. Keep the one. I'm sorry. I'm gonna defend that till I die. That shit goes
Okay.
crazy.
All right. Well, whatever. Um,
I do
but
like, however, I think this. I'm gonna pause you real quick.
sure, sure.
I think saying this season is in the same tier as Calrong is good to me. I think it is better than Calrong though. But that's just because I hate Debbie.
Yeah. Look, I mean, Cal Wrong is a season that I know people really like. Look, these are all my thoughts on all the seasons. So you're going to see my hot takes. I do not care for Cal Wrong. I do not care for San Juan del Sur. And I think Panama is a really bad season. Um, like those are my hot takes. You see them
Yeah.
now. Um, those don't really have that much to do with 48, but there are similarities with Cal Wrong. I guess a little. I can kind of see it. I just always keep going back to 41. Like
Hmm.
strong duos don't really exist as much in Cal Wrong as they do in 48. Like sure you have Aubrey and I guess like Joe slash Neil, I guess, but
Hmm.
I think it's a little different in that regard. Either way, I think I was crunching the numbers earlier. I have 48 as the 11th worst season of Survivor. So 37th best, I think that would be.
Yeah.
Um, which I think feels right. I don't think it's bad enough to be one of the worst ever. I don't think it's bad enough to be bottom 10. I think people who are saying that are probably being a little reactionary. They'd probably swap out
Hmm.
my bottom five. Like they'd probably have Redemption Island there instead of me, or even I don't know, Ghost Island or something else. But
Yeah. I
you
mean,
know,
I would. Yeah. I think my main thing is that my issue with saying with hating this is I think most Survivor, unless it's a regionally bad Survivor, is good TV.
agreed.
Survivor for me as a super fan will almost always end up being good TV. While I
Yeah,
watched this season, yes, was it annoying at times? Did I dislike it? No. I never disliked watching this season. And that's what makes it so hard for me to say, oh well, this season sucked. It's like I find maybe I'm the rose colored glasses are too on, they're staple on, but it's like at the end of the day, I'm gonna love good Survivor and I'm gonna appreciate all right Survivor.
yeah,
Maybe even if it's bad Survivor, it's like I'm gonna appreciate it because at the end of the day, it was Survivor. We got another season. We had some memorable characters, but there wasn't anything that was like an egregiously bad moment or anything that turned me away from it as a whole. Typically, that's like the main thing for me is like where is the moment where this season like truly goes down the shitter, and maybe that's why this kind of felt like a frog boiling in water. I need a moment for me to say, ugh, I'm not into this anymore. But for this, it's like enough of like mid that I'm like, yes, yum, yum, yum.
yeah.
Uh,
I mean, this is interesting because unlike any other season I've seen, there's a whole podcast archive of my comprehensive thoughts on each and every episode. And
mhm,
because of that, I've had more time to really digest and really think about what I think about this season. And I'll be honest, there are points that I really disliked and I was really not about. Like, I have my Luigi's Pizza shirt on. Shouts out to Justin, who I still think got incredibly robbed, and I think it just got such a bad rap, just such a bad. It's terrible. I'm still not over it. It'll take me a while for his boot episode to be something I personally, Joey Overton, get over. But that being said, most of the season's not like that. Most of the
Mm-hmm.
season is pretty standard new era like fluff. And that fluff is just because, we don't have a Project Italy or whatnot. There's no
Yeah.
huge moment until the fire making, which I think is very good, and the final tribal council, which I also think is really good. Is that enough of a catharsis to make up for the wait we had to have for that catharsis? No, I wouldn't say so. But I also wouldn't say that it's the worst catharsis we've had in Survivor history. I wouldn't say it's the worst buildup we've had. Like, there have been way more boring seasons with way less happening at any given time. I look at early seasons, Australian Outback is so boring. To me, like Heroes versus Healers versus Hustlers, even before like the Ben stuff and him and the fire making being introduced, I think is a very boring season. Like,
Yeah, I
I
watched that and I checked out at final 8. I
yeah.
think actually no, it was like final 9. It was a little further. It was like basically the Big Joe tribal. That was like where I emotionally started to check out, and then Lauren went home and I went, oh.
Yeah. Either way, 48, not a great season. But one thing that 48 does have is it does have interesting contestants and interesting characters. And not only did I put a tier list together of my thoughts of the season and where it takes place in the season, I also have my thoughts on how much I personally, Joey Olberding, liked each contestant. And there's going to be some hot takes here. So, saddle
Yeah.
up as
Oh, I'm
I
so excited.
bring that to you.
I will say the one thing I can't handle when it comes to gripes about New Era is people saying the casting sucks. Oh my
Yeah.
god, dog! Like put it to whatever you want. Put it to Jesse and the crew. Put it to the diversity initiative. I'll give it to both sides. Wow, where's my voice going? Really, they've just been locked in. Most casts in the New Era have been pretty good. That's never been a total weak point of a season, and I think a average New Era cast mugs most average old casts.
I
Anyways,
agree. Yeah. The only exception to me is 44, but once again, not my favorite season. So, that's
yeah.
the invasion of the nerds. I want to make something clear before I present this list. People in D tier, we just didn't see enough of. I really didn't feel like I got a good vibe of. People in C tier, okay, but also probably needed a little more from. F tier is basically for my I did not enjoy watching you tier. And as you will see as I present this, most people are there's only one person in F, and that's Charity. I have Bianca, Cedric, God, what's that guy's name? And
Justin.
Stephanie.
Oh no, not Justin. That's Kevin. That's Kevin.
That's
Sorry.
Kevin. Yeah, Kevin in
Yes.
D tier. Mostly pre-mergers, and then Cedric, who I I I don't know what to think about that guy. C tier, you got Justin, Star, Chrissy, Mitch, and Shaheen. These are people that either I didn't feel like we saw enough from, but I enjoyed their presence. Justin had a cool pizza shirt. Chrissy was dynamic at Tribal Council. Star seemed fun. Mitch, we kind of just got him complaining a lot by the end of the game. And then Shaheen, who I liked, and then he started to wane on me like the episode he went home, and I started to get kind of sick of it. But my thoughts are a little more, complicated on. We have Thomas, David, Mary, and Say. Say and David both are kind of similar in that I enjoyed their presences on the show, but maybe not exactly for how much I enjoyed watching them. Like they just both brought a lot to the season in terms of pure entertainment. Mary, I liked. I liked Mary. I didn't love her. People loved Mary. I just simply liked her. And Thomas, I did like quite a bit, but we saw like
Very
not
level.
very much of him. So it's hard to put him up there. Eighth and in the rest, we have the final four. So in the A tier, people I really liked, we have Joe, Camilla, and Kyle. I think this is self-explanatory. All three of these people very much given positive edits, seem like cool people, very, very nice, good at Survivor. Well, maybe not Joe, but they're all relatively good at Survivor. So yeah, I have those three there, and then S, I have Eva, and I would not have had Eva here before this final tribal council. I probably would have had her in like B tier, but she really shot up for me because I realized something about. I'll bring this back up in a second. I
Mhm.
realized something about Eva, which is that not just because of her autism, but she really is like maybe the most unique contestant that we've had since at least Q and Survivor 46. Like,
Okay.
it's not very often, especially for a young woman, to have somebody be so loyalty focused and so willing to play their idol for somebody else and be so open about advantages and not be targeted and come in second place, playing such a loyal and honest game throughout the
Mhm.
entirety of the game. Like she wasn't duplicitous at all and still almost won the game. Like
Yeah.
it's not only weird for the new era, it's weird for Survivor in general, even going back to like the
Yeah.
very early seasons.
I think that's right because you can have someone like Q who is anomalous in the way he plays, but
Mhm.
anyone would be weird if they played like Q,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
No matter demographic, no matter identity, they would be a one of one player, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've said he's the second coming of Coach.
Mhm.
Um, the only other like Ava is Ava is unique simply because you said it right. She is a young woman doing these things, and most of the time when you see young women in these positions, they're either say more on the strategy side, or they get clipped early, or they're just the mergatory boot.
Yeah.
That tends to happen. Um, or say they're pre-merged because they're too scared, whatever, Parvati 2 or whatever, Parvati 2 even.
Mhm.
Well, actually
Shut
no,
up.
it's Parv Tua.
Thanks,
But
Sam.
yeah,
Thanks.
um
Um,
Parv Tua, get him out in the pre-merge. uh
yep.
but yeah.
Uh, it's interesting. I'm just thinking here while you're talking, like, who's the contestant that Eva's most like? This isn't me trying to say somebody is autistic or not, for the record. I'm talking purely in terms of gameplay. And my thought was like, okay, who is a young woman who's been on Survivor who has made it to the end and almost won, despite playing pretty much an honest and loyal game, very outright the entire time? And my mind went to, is Eva the new era Amanda Kimmel? I kind of think so. I kind of convinced myself because I would almost argue that Eva has more strategic chops than Amanda Kimmel did, at least better at presenting herself at Final Tribal Council. Um, but I think it's interesting because Amanda Kimmel and Eva don't play two dissimilar games if you really get down
Yeah.
to brass tacks.
um I'll have my 10 cents on that. I haven't finished China. I need to rewatch Micronesia. I haven't watched Heroes versus Villains. um
Gotcha. Okay. Well, maybe the comments can tell me if I'm right.
aside from that, um I know, based on what I've seen, what I know of Amanda Kimmel's performance,
Mhm.
um, I'm not opposed to that, but I'm also always up for some Amanda Kimmel slander, given
Oh,
how, yeah, I know, I from what I've seen about her games, if Russell Hantz didn't exist, she would be the person to point to as like, oh, she kind of sucks actually. Like, if you lose at FTC a couple times, you know,
oh, I got you.
it's
Yeah,
like that Big Brother Paul of like, they
yeah.
get there, they try, but like at the end of the day, you have to say something has fundamentally gone wrong for you to lose the same way 2 times in a row. And it's like, even if you're good enough to last that long, right? The quality of
Yeah.
like the value of longevity in the game is good, but like you still have to be able to win. And if you lose that way multiple times, it's like,
You
I don't know what to
you
tell
raise a
you.
good point. You raise a very good point,
Um,
for sure. But
yeah,
instead, the reality we live in is people saying every other minute, like, "Oh my God, Amanda Kimmel, such an underrated player."
yeah.
No one ever talks about Amanda Kimmel. Why aren't we talking about Amanda Kimmel? Which is funny when you juxtapose that with Eva, who's getting so
Yeah.
much hate online for not working with Star, not,
Yeah.
or saying that she wants Star out or blah 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 blah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just talk nonsense, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
whatever.
Yep.
Either way, I'm an Eva fan. That's my tier list when it comes to the players. I mean, like, yeah, most people tread on the good side, which is a good thing. But like, this kind of once again speaks to the disparity in editing, where it's like the top four people are the only four people that we're really getting a lot of insight into. Like, the only other person is probably Say, but she went home before the merge. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and like Cedric made all these weird moves, all these weird votes, and we never got an explanation for any of them. So I can't help but put him in like D tier because it's like I don't know what to make of this guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird season in that regard, and I think this tier list sort of helps put my thoughts together like physically when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Well, that is just two of the tier lists I have. I actually do have a third. And that one is talking about Kyle. We honestly haven't really
Yeah.
talked that much about Kyle as a winner, um, which I think is interesting because he's like a solid winner, but he's like also not that interesting of a winner in many ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That is the thing with Kyle, right? Kyle is the average guy.
Yep.
That is not inherently that like you want to talk about it, but then you go and you're like, well, he's pretty good. He's pretty good. He's pretty
Mhm.
good. Wow, he's just pretty good. And I'm interested to see where you take him in this conversation because, yeah, again, like there isn't much to say because
No.
everything you can say is like kind of short, but I don't mind that for him because it's fun to have a winner you don't really need to have think pieces about.
No, that is nice. Yeah. I think I think Kyle is a perfectly solid winner. And as I share my tier list of all the winners, many of which have hot takes, blah 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 blah. You get the drill. Um, you will see that he is right in the middle of B tier, right in the middle. He is a
Mm-hmm.
completely in the middle winner. He is in between Marianne from 42, once again the connections to revealing the secret about you, and Sandra in her win in Pro Islands. Um, Kyle, I think, is interesting, and the reason I have him B tier is twofold. The reason why he gets all the way up to B tier is the fact that he had so much loyalty with so many people and seemed to have such good connections with people. The reason why he's only in B tier is he would have lost if he was going up against Camilla, and he basically picked the only route that he could have taken to win, which is both a good thing since he was able to take that route, but also a bad thing since all it takes is somebody else, Camilla, winning that final tribal council, and he could be the one, and he is the one losing, basically.
Yeah.
So, or Camilla winning that final immunity challenge, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Kyle is firmly in B tier. I showed this off to my brothers, one of which is Greg. Shouts out to him on episode 3. And they said that he should actually be lower, but I want to hear your thoughts.
Doing some analysis here. I mean, there's a lot of people I don't. Personally, I'd have Marianne higher, but that again, that's the Canadian bias probably.
Yeah.
I think Kyle resting comfortably in the top of B tier makes sense. Like this feels good with some of the people who's wait.
Yeah.
Again, again, this might just be me showing my like lack of knowledge of certain Survivor seasons.
Sure.
But some of the ones I enjoy and I know I like value highly, but it's like I think Kyle maybe should be a little lower than like I feel like him and Natalie Anderson being in the same tier is correct. I feel like he should be lower than her within that tier. That's
Yeah.
like my personal thing. I'm a
That
huge Natalie Anderson enjoyer of her game, but
that's
I
that's
like
what
Sam
my
Wondusser and you don't.
that's what my brothers said as well. They said that basically the two of them should be swapped, but I'd already made this tier list. No one's going to make
Yeah.
another. So I don't necessarily disagree with that at all, by the way. I think Natalie probably should be higher than Kyle, but I mean, those are like semantics. Either way, we have
Yeah.
that Kyle is in the right ballpark. He is in the
Yeah.
right sort of zone. Um, and when it comes to this tier list, I usually change this season by season, and I actually changed it a lot this season because I've sort of made more peace and I've sort of started to value more the idea of somebody having undying loyalty to you and being willing to throw their game away from you. So like JT used to be at the top of A tier, and now I moved him up to S tier because he
Mm-hmm.
was, somebody everyone was willing to be undyingly loyal to.
Yeah.
Same is true of D. D had that same thing in 45. I still think she's easily the best New Era winner. People were saying that, oh, is Kyle the best New Era winner? No, no, he's not. It's still D. But that also applies like Parvati is in Micronesia's way up there. Who else? Who else? Who else?
I'm
You know,
interested to see what this means about inherently then Tom. Tom
yeah,
only being in the middle of A, because to me Tom is the same thing, and Tom is someone whose game only got stronger the further I saw this game go, and the more I realized nobody's played like him, and like the closest we ever got was Joe, and Joe
yeah,
didn't win, and like maybe that's just that Tom was the only person who could pull it off in the time that it could be pulled off, but like at the end of the day, like Tom also is in that undying loyalty to you conversation, and
yeah.
and kind of fits in that all time winner pantheon for me. Like this season did give me a great appreciation for how well Tom played. Which
Very good
thank you
point.
for Joe for making us have those conversations because I think that it is interesting sometimes how a winner can recontextualize other winners and really
Yeah.
push them further up for you.
That is a great point, Sunder. I did not consider that when it came to Tom. I think I moved him up a little bit, but I probably didn't move him enough, at least not in the A tier. Like he is in the same sort of category as Parvati and Yule in terms of people being so loyal to them that it feels like people will throw away their games for them. Like Parvati is a little different because it wasn't like one individual person was undyingly loyal to her. She had like a posse. She had Natalie
Yeah,
and Alexis. Yule was also sort of like a posse, but Becky was undyingly loyal to him, and so was Sundra. I would say Tom fits around that category. The difference being that, like, unlike Yule and not too unlike Parvati, people actively wanted Tom out. The thing is, he just kept winning immunity challenges.
yeah,
Um, so they couldn't actually target him. In addition, like if Katie or Ian wins that final immunity challenge, Tom is going home. That's
yeah,
not necessarily true of Parvati. That's not true of Yule because Ozzy would have
yeah.
probably gone home, and if that was anyways.
But I think the point there is at least Tom got himself to an end game where they weren't going to win.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. Especially when it is a challenge like that where it's just willpower.
Yeah,
You're working with a 40-year-old guy who was a firefighter during 9/11.
yeah,
You're like, and especially Tom himself, like no offense to Ian. He doesn't beat Tom in that challenge, and Tom found a way to whittle him down in every capacity possible.
yeah,
And um and found and had himself against, I'm not gonna say like two mentally weaker people, but he had himself around people he could play around and beat. And he played to that well where it's like at the point where they were no longer undyingly loyal, they weren't strong enough.
yeah.
Um,
My, a lot of my opinions have changed, not just the people at the very top, like those we've talked about. I've had some of my
yeah,
feelings change over the past few seasons, but especially with this one. Like Tina is at the top of B tier, flirting with A tier. She used to be like in firmly in C tier, but the more time flies by, the more I am like Tina played an amazing social game that she was able to have Colby basically throw away $1 million for her.
mm-hmm,
And I feel similarly about Chris Underwood. I used to think Chris was the worst winner. I used to think he was bottom five or something like that.
yeah,
But my perception of him has changed a lot because of how people were willing to work with him and essentially throw their games away. In part, not really to work with him, but to get out Rick Devens. But still, they're willing to do that. And
yeah.
so, yeah, my perceptions of a lot of winners have changed. And I'm sure that's one of the cool things about Survivor is like stuff like that constantly changes and evolves. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I think Chris Underwood is again one of those spots of like You know what? Actually, he's not that bad. Um,
Yeah,
like I think people like the way he won. Obviously, it feels like an affront to Survivor on people, but like he was pretty good,
yeah,
and he played to his outs in a lot of scenarios. And I think other people maybe didn't consider as hard what him playing to his outs could look like and what the ramifications to their games could be there. But
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, for sure. Anyways, that's all to say that Kyle being a B tier winner, like a totally solid one by itself, isn't that interesting. But I think it is interesting for how it makes me perceive other winners, which is why I'm not just saying, yeah, Kyle is the blah 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 24th best winner ever or whatever. But I'm explaining that he is this and this is why other people now change to this based on that. Like this
yeah.
is the influence of Survivor 48 and my thoughts on different players.
The
Um,
meta is forever changing. How we have our conversations should forever change. You know, the goat Jeremy versus the goat Boston or whatever.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
LeBron versus Jordan. They're different games happening at different times, but it can still change how we view it all.
for sure, for sure. Well, that's about all I really have to talk about at Survivor 8, 48 at the moment. Um, but those are not the only seasons that have things to talk about. First of all,
Well,
we did
actually,
get, yeah, go ahead. Anything
I was
else?
gonna say actually, yeah, you're right, you're right. You continue. I'm smoking crack.
That's all right. Feel free to keep doing that. Um, we had two other seasons that we sort of got a taste of. The interesting one is really Survivor 50, but we did get our preview of Survivor 49, which is a season that is coming out before Survivor 50, something we have to remember.
Yeah,
And this really wouldn't normally be something that's interesting enough to talk about. I have two things I want to mention. Number one, it appears that the theme, quote unquote theme, not really a theme, is going to be shipwrecks for this season, which I think is
I like
pretty
that.
cool. This past
Uh,
season we had onions, 45 had pelicans, 46 had bat, or no, 47 had bats.
47 was like creatures of the night.
Yeah, yeah,
44 was medieval. 43 was season 43. Um,
yeah, yeah. Um,
but I will say this is kind of a good time for them to try to erase and cover up what is it game changers, because that was also shipwreck themed.
oh yeah.
um yeah, game changers is very very shipwreck themed, and I like to think about that season as little as I
Oh, you're
can.
right. Wow, it's right in the logo. Yeah, I never noticed.
Yeah, the tribal council also had like a beached ship in the back of it.
Interesting. Yeah,
I
no,
I was looking at that a
I
lot when the Varner incident happened.
funny. Um, Anyways, so there's that. The shipwreck theming might be cool, but it's fine. I really don't mind. I know a lot of people are like very much about like we need theming for the season, we need this, that, and other, and I kind of agree. Like I would love it if we had a name instead of the number, but I do think it's way better just having a pelican be like, oh yeah, 45 is the pelican season, or 46
Hmm.
is the whatever else season,
Yeah,
rather than like 41 and 42, where it's like 41, this is the season where we have a torch. 42 is the one where we have a key on the side. Like
yeah,
and that's not theming at all. It's just kind of
yeah.
basic.
I was really hoping. I mean, my thing was like with 42. I was really hoping to have a big puzzle at the end. That would be awesome. You know,
Yeah.
the Kagian challenge. But I think yeah, I believe this might have been something we discussed on the first episode. But this was like my thing of like you embrace into the set dressing of each season. Embrace into the
Yeah.
theme of what the paint of the coat of paint is going to be. What do you theme the tribes around? What do you do all this? You know, lean into that as hard as possible as
Yeah.
to what the mascots for the season are going to be, what the visual imagery is going to be, and then let the players do the rest of that in determining what the rest of the storylines are.
Yeah.
Don't try to ham fist in some heroes, healers, hustlers, or whatever, because half the people who crave theming like that again,
Yeah.
they just want brains, bronze, beauty over and over again. Just go to
Exactly.
Australian Survivor if you want that.
I was about
They
to
had
say,
two
yeah.
brainstorm beauties in how long? Or two brain spawns? Come on, dude. Like you can have that over there, but the real Survivor heads, we are playing with themes and having unthemed casts because we realize at the end of the day, it's better to let the players make the narratives than to make the narratives make the players.
Yeah. I honestly love the fact that Survivor doesn't usually repeat themes. Like, the only ones that they've repeated are they did fans versus favorites twice, they did it again in Karamu, and then they did blood versus water twice with San Juan del Sur. Um, I'm
And
just looking
then
because I have all of them.
brainstorm beauty.
Oh yes, yes, of course. Um, Still only 3 times. I mean, compared to Australian Survivor, like that's
Within
uh
the history of that show, yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah, it's crazy. But I like that. I like the fact that they know that Heroes versus Villains is the most loved season, and they're not like, okay, well, let's just do that a bunch of times, or they're not like, well, Second Chances was, a good season. Let's do that again. I like the fact that they are all right just letting theming die instead of having it have a slow, painful death, which
Yeah.
you could argue is what happened with Karamoan. I wouldn't say so. You could argue that's what happened with San Juan del Sur. I would agree with that, but it sort of depends on who you are. All right. That was 40. Oh, one more thing about 49. How could we forget? There's a man named Rizzo. It would be
Yes.
really interesting if he had a fun nickname, though. Rizzo's just not that exciting. What would you suggest as a nickname to a guy named Rizzo? Sunder, are you trying to mute right now?
We're risen.
Face. Yeah.
He's the Riz God.
He's the Riz God. I'm not the Riz God. But Rizzo is. He is
Yeah.
Riz God with one Z, by the way. So that's awesome.
This feels like someone dropping their gamer tag on Survivor and saying "Call me by that."
Yeah.
Which is really funny because for any Project PM heads out there, there is a top 100 PM all-time player. PM, by the way, PMP plus, all that is a mod of Brawl, Super Smash Bros. Brawl. There's a lot to go over. Either way, what's his name? Is it Justin? Is that his name?
I did not know about this.
Okay, so there's a guy, his name starts with J. He's from SoCal. He goes by the name Justin Waterfalls, I believe is what it is, and or J Falls for short. And he is a PM player, and he is on this season. That is awesome. Yeah, because I literally saw tweets of someone saying, "Yeah, cat's out of the bag. My bracket demon is on Survivor." That's awesome. Imagine seeing the guy where you go and you're like, "I'm gonna go to the local." You go there, and there's always this one guy who beats. He's your high school bully that you go out for drinks with after. That's what happens. By the way, for the people who don't know how a fighting game works, this is like a guy you're really chill with, but you play against him and he just beats your ass. And there's nothing you can do. You see him in the bracket and you dread because you're like, time to get put in the locker again. And then imagine seeing that and then going,
that guy's on Survivor.
Damn.
That guy's living life better than I am,
Yeah. I do have one more thing to say about the cast of this season.
Sure.
There's a guy I noticed, and there's a lot of people who I have conversations with about casting on Survivor and types of people that have existed that have been on, right? You know, you have like more of like an emo guy and Rob Zabachnik from Thailand. You've seen that.
My favorite.
You have really muscle bound guys like Joe and David. You have people who are very of the times of each era. You know, you have Vince. But one specific thing
person.
There are people. One thing I think about is white people with locks. You have Flicka from that season from Cook Islands and some other people like that. But aside from two people who I don't really care, Vince doesn't count in this because that's just a bit of matted hair.
Okay.
The two people who I think are maybe contenders for being white guy with locks are Grant Matos and Jonathan Young. Both of them, to me, it's too short to count as like being like a white guy with locks. That being said,
Grant counts.
Grant counts. But I think it has to be longer than ears. It has to be longer than the ears.
Grant
me
has
to
to
count
feel
it.
so good. This is probably the most someone's talked about him in a podcast in
Here's
10
the thing.
years.
I don't count him because I don't think there's really been a guy who's like that. Because Grant Sunder was like a football player. There's layers
Yeah,
to it.
that's up to Grant. Yeah.
I saw the cast reveal for this season and I popped off because finally this season we have an old white guy with locks. We have like
Seasoned.
this is like I imagine he like as much as Gabler is weird, this guy to me seems like he's gonna be the weirdest guy of all time, and that's awesome. Like this guy is just an anomaly, and I'm so glad that this like Survivor trivia that I've had of like real bona fide white guy with locks, like he's got him down like past the shoulders.
Yeah.
Whoa. That this is a piece of Survivor trivia that I brought up to some people, and like it's finally coming true that a trivia piece I have is now like kind of disproven false by a new cast reveal, which is fun for someone who's really only started watching in the new era of like, yo, this is someone who's never been here. This is someone who I think probably would have slipped in like maybe I imagine in the early 2000s. I'm surprised why no one had slipped in through casting at that point.
Yeah.
Because you really want people of the times.
It's a great point because Survivor started out as a total Survivor show. Now it's marginally survivally. But like when I think about white guys with dreads, which of course I am in every facet of my life thinking about white guys with dreads, I'm thinking about these are the people who are the coconut vendors. Of course, Vince doesn't count, but they're the type of people you see walking around on the beach, maybe with a metal detector, saying, blah, 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 I am one with the sand, et cetera, et cetera. You would expect somebody like that would have gotten on Survivor to this point. Like, sure, Vince is there, but if he doesn't count, he doesn't count,
Yeah. And that's why, like, really it is, like, there's people who are of that archetype who don't have it, but, like, Vince really being the only one. But aside from that, like, that is, like, the thing of, like, Survivor is a social experiment. And when you look at archetypes of people from the times, it is kind of astonishing that, like, I mean, even especially back in the old days, pre-40 or pre-41, they were casting without the diversity initiative. Like, I'm surprised that a guy like that didn't slip in.
Yeah.
Because there was really, especially with it, my qualifier really being a white guy with locks, because like it is kind of like a weird type of person, but a type of person that existed nonetheless. So yeah, my little trivia piece is dead now. Thank you, guy whose name I forget. Oh, I would also like to talk about, because I saw some of the cast before. Now, no hate, he could be the nicest guy of all time, but I believe isn't his name Jake?
I don't know the cast of this season.
There is a guy who is a hockey player and corrections officer from Alberta, Canada.
Wow.
No. Yeah, that's a package. And if you know what that package means, oh boy. He might give charity a run for her money when it comes to old details brought up on social media. Yeah, that is the polite way of saying it. The mean way of saying it, there's a real chance this is the most racist guy we'll ever see on Survivor in the new era.
Wow.
This is like I, based on the demographics, I would be absolutely astonished if he voted differently than how I thought he would in the most recent Canadian election. This is like a combo of some real interesting stuff. Not to say he could be a good person. There's always a chance. That being said, again, corrections officer from Alberta, still lives in Alberta, plays a lot of hockey. Yeah. We're gonna see a guy of all time. This is a Canadian of all time. Maybe the first one I will not give my undying and loyal support to.
Yeah. I'll be real. A lot of that about the cast strikes me. I'm still not over the PM player thing. I'm still not over that. Because I didn't know I have not looked at the cast at all for 49 for the record. Like I've only seen what we've seen in previews. Like I don't care if John from Mississippi or whatever is on the season. Like I'll figure that out when the show starts or when we do pregame interviews.
Yep.
But the PM thing is crazy to me because like this is not the first Smash player we've had on Survivor. We of course have Kenny. We have Ken like the best Super Smash Bros. Melee player ever, at least before the five gods showed up. Very important distinction.
before
But
Meg, yeah.
at one time was the undisputed GOAT of Super Smash Bros. Melee. And then we have PM, which is basically Melee 2. And we have a guy who I guess,
I
isn't
believe he was ranked 96 out of 100 of all time. Recently,
still on there. Like that's pretty freaking good.
Yeah.
Very interesting that we have two, especially like I talked a little, mentioned 44 being Revenge of the Nerds or whatever, Invasion of the Nerds. Like, but we've seen a lot of very specific like niches show up on Survivor recently. Like in 45, we had Brando and Drew having a conversation about competitive Pokemon. And now Brando streams on Twitch him doing like Nuzlocke all the time and him just doing Iron Mods. Not even Nuzlocke, him doing Iron Mods. Boy, we're really making the audience question what we're talking about now. Trust me, it's a thing. It's very difficult Pokemon, essentially. So it's very interesting. I love it, for the record. Like shouts out to when video game nerds, like true video game nerds, get on the show. Like give me more Ken, give me more Mari Takahashi. I wish that she'd stayed in longer. Your point, Sunder, put Sunder on the show.
Put us on the show.
Put me on the show. I would love that. I am definitely not top 100 in the world in PM, but my Bowser, you never know when the down beat's gonna hit.
I'm bad at everything.
So that's crazy. I'm not over that. You know what else is crazy, Sunder? Season 50, In the Hands of the Fans, which I guess is like the official like thing that we're going with. I guess that's the official logo, is In the Hands of the Fans. The cast reveal is in a few days. It is not long from now. And it got me thinking, a lot of stuff. And it made me want to put together a prediction for who I think is going to be on the season. I have tried to avoid as many rumors as possible. I've heard of a few, and maybe I'll have to bring those up. But
we won't bring them up too much because
but that's me. I knew, Sunder, you put together a list of who you wanted to see, not necessarily your predictions, but
no. So this was different. This was the idea I had was for a New Era All Stars. We had that was like the thought experiment we had in our group, which is divorced from 50. I don't really have many tight thoughts on 50 anymore because it's a lot of people. It's been a lot of talking about it. I've listened to I listened like halfway through the R have stuff on it for them picking their people. At a point you come and say, well, I can't wait to see it. I hope it's good. There's one or two people I'd like to see. That would be nice. I just hope it's a well-balanced cast.
Yeah. And I hope it is too. I put together this list. I'm pretty sure that it applies by the diversity mandate, but I could be wrong. I didn't really look at it too crazy in terms of that. But let me share this list that I have of my personal prediction for what I think for what Survivor 50 will look like. And I'm just throwing it out there. So my big things for this are, I think that they're going to bring back a bunch of quote-unquote legends of the game that Jeff Probst really likes, but I think he's only going to bring back like 2 winners. Those winners in this case being Sandra Diaz-Twine, because she's never going to turn down an opportunity to play Survivor, and Tyson, because he is also not going to turn down an opportunity to play Survivor. And both of them are very entertaining and are always entertaining. Everybody else, it's 50-50 between New Era and Old Era, kind of. Not really. New Era isn't really New Era. It's more like past second chances, essentially. But everything else is random. So I have, for instance, I'll just say the list. I had Andrea,
for the audio listeners,
Andrea coming back again. Love Andrea. I would love to see her play again. Angelina, because everybody loves Angelina. I don't really think she's like a legend, but people love her. Cassidy, because I thought we need some New Era girl representation and somebody who hasn't won. And people are always talking about how Rob Cassidy was. So, you know,
Mm-hmm.
put her there. Christian, I think he's a lock, honestly. Christian's there no matter what.
Yeah.
Sari, I think she's there no matter what. Colby, he's always talking about how he can play again. And I have Colby and Jerry both there. I would part of me is just really wanting to see them play again, but also I know
Mm-hmm.
Survivor does love its Survivor Borneo and Survivor Australian Outback players. And with that in mind, I also have Elizabeth Hasselbeck, formerly Pilarski. I will admit I've heard some rumors that she's like in the mix, maybe. So that's kind of why she's there, but I don't know if those are actually true.
Yeah, I can give you the details based on the rumors as to your cast, but like,
yeah, I've tried to avoid
yeah,
it all. But I do think that Australian Outback had the most ratings of any season ever. And if they're going to bring viewers back, they're going to bring back players from 25 years ago. And I think
yeah,
Colby, Jerry, and Elizabeth all fit that criteria, plus Elizabeth being a celebrity. In a similar vein, I have Jervis coming back. Shouts up to Blood versus Water, still going on behind
mm-hmm.
me. I think he's recognizable. He's a pretty good player. He's third time playing. He wants to go back out there, and he's from the very first season. So I think there's going to be somebody from Borneo on
Yeah.
Survivor 50. It's to me, it's either between him or Greg Weiss. Some people have been saying Jenna Lewis. I don't know. I also have Genevieve there.
Yeah.
Look, I don't. People really love Genevieve for some reason. I think she's simply a pretty good player on a pretty good season. But once again, need more new era girl representation. So I have her there.
I
And plus, I
think
do,
yeah.
yeah,
I'll talk about
go ahead.
Genevieve and Q, but I think the thing for them is they fit correctly into the layer of um player who is very reminiscent of a previous legend, but is still their own person.
Yeah,
Um, and Genevieve is the new era Parvati.
it's
She
true.
is the most distilled version of everything that is and was Parvati. Like she feels like Parvati in the same way that Q feels like Coach. You
Yeah.
see the connections, and there's a lot of mannerisms that are similar. And maybe obviously Genevieve, like she isn't trying to seduce anyone out there, but you still
Mhm.
have the mannerisms that makes her own way and her connections that really do just like uh mimic that. And I think that is kind of what people love about her is even if she is kind of different, she is kind of reminiscent too. It's like, okay, Genevieve's great. It's like, why is Genevieve great? Well, she's this and this and this. And well, also she's kind of and it's a lot of things and a lot of mannerisms that remind you of Parvati.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
and it's
Similar
possible to have
auras.
two legends that kind of play similarly.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. I mean, think about like when Tony won Kagayan, how many times are they trying to cast the new Tony, or
Mm-hmm.
something like that? Or when Boston Rob was on Marquesas, how many times they're trying to cast the new Boston Rob? Like, yeah, I think
Yeah.
Genevieve, while maybe wasn't originally like that for Parvati, I think could definitely transition to that role. And as you mentioned, Q was also there. I think Q's a lock.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I was this close to putting Coach on here, anyways. But that's just kind of, but I didn't because Coach is probably a little too old at this point, and
He's also
Coach,
been saying on social media, I was actually looking at posts of his earlier today, that
yeah,
he, because there was a leak that said he would be on, and there's been a lot of social media posts from him on Instagram
mhm,
Reels saying, hey, I'm going to be honest with you. I appreciate the support. I don't think I need to be out there.
yeah, yeah,
Like literally explicitly saying, I think I have a good story. I think my time on Survivor was good. I think I've done a great job and I have a great narrative. I don't need to go out there one more time.
I agree with that. I think for what it's worth, that Coach has the best 3 season arc of any contestant in Survivor history, bar none. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
not even close. Like Ozzy is close, but then he came back a fourth time. He game changers. So, um, I think his character arc's pretty perfect. Though Coach is one of one. Q's the
Yeah.
closest, so I'm cool having him back. Going over the rest here, we have Jesse. Jesse Lopez. I think Jesse Lopez has a few things going for him. Number one, he's the fallen angel 43, but he also has the power of having a good story already with him, being a
Hmm.
rehabilitated guy, father, etc. Wholesome, he's got all the elements.
Hmm.
I think he has something to prove. So I think he's good. Um, I have Joe. We already talked about Joe.
Yeah.
I don't know if Joe's like a lock necessarily. I think it's either him or Eva. I think one of the two of them is going to be on 50. In my opinion, I think it's much more likely to be Joe.
Yeah.
Um, so he's there. I have Jonathan Young here from 42, which may seem like a weird one, but Jeff Probst loves Jonathan Young. And
Yeah.
you know who else loves Jonathan Young is Rob Mariano, Boston Rob. And Jonathan Young, somebody who has big muscles. Nobody else on this theoretical cast I'm putting together has huge muscles other than Joe. So
Yeah.
I think he's good for that, and he can jump over a boulder or whatever. I have Caleb here, Caleb from 45, which was kind of a tough inclusion, but I mean, he successfully played the shot in the dark. He has a lot to prove. He has a
Yeah.
storyline for why he'd be brought back. And the legend theming, blah, 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 is a little loose. But I think you could say Caleb playing a shot in the dark to negate all his votes is worthy of being quote unquote a legend. So
Yeah.
I could see them bringing him back.
It's kind of on like Wentworth idols for herself tier.
Yeah, no,
Obviously,
it
like
is.
there's caveats to it, but yeah, it is the closest we've gotten in New Era, really.
Speaking of Kelly Wentworth, I have her here. I adore Kelly Wentworth, so I would love to see her back. I don't know if she would come back. I don't know if she's in the blah 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 blah, but I would like to see
Yeah.
her back. I think she is a legend, and I think once again, I don't think there will be that many winners here. There will be a few, but I think Wentworth fits the category of girl legend who also has not won.
Yeah.
So she's there. And then rounding out the list, we have Malcolm and Rick Devens. I think Rick Devens is probably pretty close to a lock. Honestly, the only thing keeping him away is his TV schedule. As somebody who works in TV news, it is
He doesn't
not.
anymore.
Oh, he doesn't? Oh, well,
No,
great then.
he worked for like a university now.
Oh, well, then, yeah, he's a lock. Okay. Yeah. Well, there you go. And Malcolm, who is kind of in a Wentworth category of like has played a few times, but fits the status pretty well. So yeah,
Yeah.
thoughts,
Um.
Sunder.
Okay. First off, Angelina's been in a lot of the leaks. She's what people think is going to be there. Christian's in there too. So is Sari.
Mhm.
Colby's in there, unfortunately. I would love to see a season of Colby and Jerry without Colby, without both of them. I would love to see them finally have a. I would love to see one of them have a shot of having a legacy on their own.
Yeah.
Colby kind of already has that already. I would love to see that for Jerry. So she's who I'd want to see out of the two on the season more. I believe from what I've heard, Genevieve does not want to play again.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's probably too soon to have her switch up on that. Um,
Yeah.
Elizabeth Hasselbeck was apparently recently cut from conversations or wasn't that deeply in them anyways.
Gotcha. Okay.
Um, Jervis, they are leaning more Jenna than Jervis is what I've heard, but I don't know. Because again, the only person I trust is a certain color out there, um, rather than some other
Oh yeah,
sources.
I got you. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Jesse, I mean, he's posted about being cut on his
Oh,
own.
okay.
Him and Carolyn posted on the same day, being like, "Guess they don't want us."
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, I
Um,
forgot about that. Yeah, I do
Joe, I
remember
think
that. Yeah.
Joe, I think is a lock. Jonathan, I think, yeah, he's going to be there probably. Caleb, I think, is good for establishing the legacy of Shot in the Darks. I think
Yeah.
if you want Shot in the Darks to be a part of the season or part of the show going forwards, and you like that dynamic and you like that advantage and you wanted to be there, you put Caleb on to push an agenda of the advantage. Not that he doesn't have a good enough stuff about it. He's like a high quality player and was like very much immediately targeted for being a good player. But I think that putting him on is basically doing like, hey, it is establishing validity to that to the shot in the dark. Kelly Wentworth, I haven't heard anything about her. Malcolm, I wouldn't be surprised if he's there. I haven't heard anything about him. Q is basically in everything. Rick Devens is in a lot of it. People aren't happy. I don't mind him. Sandra, I have heard nothing about.
Wow. Okay.
And Tyson, Lord knows. I mean, my one person I really want to see out there is Rob Sesternino. I'd love to see him have one last chance.
Yeah.
He's not on your list, but I mean, I could see him not being on our list. But yeah,
You want to know the reason I don't have Rob Sesternino there? I mean, I'm an RHAP patron. I literally talked to Rob earlier today because he did his call-in show. Or no, I guess
yeah.
it was earlier today. Like he's great. I would love to see him
Happy
play.
birthday, by the way.
Oh yeah, it is my birthday. By the way, for those watching or listening. Haha. Anyways, that doesn't really matter. The reason I would not want to see Rob Cesternino out there is because I think he would ruin any season he's on. Not him, but the mystique around him. The season would be ruined based on how well or how poorly he does. Think about it like this. If Rob Cesternino goes home early, people are saying, "Oh, it's all stars all over again." He's being targeted because of his influence and him being a strong player already, and people, especially on the online survivor spaces, are going to be furious and are going to be saying this season sucks. We got rid of the one person we wanted to see for 20 years, blah 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 blah. But if he goes really far, it's the same problem where it's like, oh, this guy was insulated because he interviews all these people and has brought the survivor community together. At this point, to me, I think Rob Cesternino is legitimately better as a survivor figurehead than a survivor player. I don't think he should play.
Yeah.
I think it'd be bad for the season. I really do.
I can see that perspective. I do think you are overestimating the percentage of online fan spaces that directly interact with Rob Cesternino.
Sure.
I think maybe I'm overestimating those spaces or the other spaces, but I think there's enough out there that Rob is a separate cut, and I think Asia might have been a test drive. We don't know. She might have interpreted, but I think that there can still be good things coming out of it, and I think surely, I mean, no other person. If someone thinks they're on a season, they're going to try to pregame with other people who are going to be on a season, and I don't think that Rob is. I just would have the most optimistic view because I would like to see him out there, and I think even more than anything, I would just like to see him have one last shot, even if it goes poorly, just to have the acknowledgement and then put the faith in him. I would love to see that for him.
Sure. I mean, like I agree with you. Like I think that a lot of my casting when it comes to the people I have on my Survivor 50 are people with unfinished business. Like Cassidy has unfinished business, Suri unfinished business, et cetera, blah blah blah. Rob Cesternino fits the category. He fits it all well. The difference is just being he has podcasts about Survivor and been the voice of the Survivor community basically for 15 years or whatever. So I think there's a difference between him and Cassidy Clark. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think the one thing is like if it were like in the hands of the fans for like say 57 or something, I could see okay, no problem. But I think if for the 50th season, if you're trying to have some larger names and you're trying to just be like, hey, look, this is out to the fans.
Yeah.
If you're really trying to sell, hey, this is for the fans, he's someone who represents such a large section and is such a large part of the show's like pantheon in history that if it's even to be titled in the hands of the fans, then they're like, we got Sarit, one of the fan favorites. We got the guy who's been a voice of a lot of fans and has been the voice of fans to players.
Good
you
point.
can have other layers there. So I think he probably should be there. Do I think he is? I hope.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point. I had not considered that at all. Hey, we will learn Wednesday morning. I will not be awake, but Actually, what if I do wake up for it? That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll
yeah.
probably do that too. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you have any other thoughts, Sunder, on this season, on 50, on 49, and anything
Would
at all?
you like to dabble into my quick new era All Stars thought experiment? Because
Oh,
I have
yes,
two cast lists
absolutely.
here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have two cast lists. My one friend Brandon, he brought this up of ideas of new era All Stars. Who would you want to have? I have two lists here. Both of them hit diversity. One of them is actual thoughts that I think would be more likely to happen, and one of them has more crack smoking of weirder players who I don't think would actually be on there. There's some finagling I think I could have done later, but this was done last night at like 4 a.m.
Yeah.
So for the first one, the actual thoughts, I don't know if you've pulled this up on the screen share, but I'll just
I,
say
I
we
can't
have,
share it, but
okay.
yeah.
I was going to say, if you take a screenshot of the Discord message
Oh,
and
yeah,
just
sure, sure.
open that up. So New Era All Stars, 41 would be, people from that would be Ricard, Erica, maybe Shan, but I don't know. I don't know if Shan would actually be there. 42, I think it should be Omer and Marianne. 43, Cassidy, Jesse. 44, Jam Jam. 45, Bruce, Kelly, Caleb. 46, Q Maria. 47, Rachel Genevieve. 48, Camilla, Joe, David, Say. Um,
Yeah.
this has there's some people I think maybe you could drop like a David. I forget. There's someone I was thinking should probably be on there from one of the earlier ones. Oh yeah. Matthew Grinstead Maley, I think, would also be the potential other 44. Dropping a guy for him would make sense. But
Hmm.
this is like it has a lot of strategists. It's a strategy heavy cast, but with enough people who have dips into strategy and also chaos that I think it could still be interesting. Like if you build the tribe right, and you have a tribe of 6 people, someone like Say or like Q should reasonably be able to slide along simply because um, the strategist should realize that if they vote that person out, they are not safe even on the next vote. And so having a large alliance of just like all strategists will should not fly. Like if you have enough intelligent people, they should realize at some point like it's more fluid than just pure game styles. And
Yeah.
so if the people who are a bit more chaotic have some gumption to them and can slide into that, there can be room for people who are playing dynamically. And I think a lot of the people who are strategists are not just like strategy sit on the side the whole time. They have that a dynamic layer to them.
Yeah. I pulled up the image now, and
Yes.
when it comes to what the actual thoughts would be, it's interesting because obviously we're not going to get a new era All Stars yet, but it is something worth thinking about because we're 8 seasons in, 7 seasons when the first actual All Stars happens. I'd like some of the omissions here. I'll say in
Mm-hmm.
your actual thoughts, both in your actual thoughts and in your dreams. Um, I love the exclusion of Charlie and the inclusion of Maria. I love the exclusion of Andy. I love you. I love being willing to cut someone like Carolyn from your actual thoughts because, like, to me, it seems pretty clear that she won't be playing again Survivor, at least not for a while. Um,
She
but
probably should. She is like if there's anyone who is a new era all star, she actually is. She probably
yeah,
actually should.
yeah,
But I could see a world in which I wanted to see worlds in which because she's on the actual the dreams list,
yeah,
but I think that there are some groups of players who have too tight of a connection to each other that should not play together. There are also some players who had that but still can. Like a Rachel Genevieve, that makes sense because there are two sides of the same coin that had to get each other out. They're willing to turn on each other. That is fine by me. Someone,
yeah,
a Maria Charlie, that is a dynamic we've already seen played, and their games are going to be like Colby Jerry, where they will never be one without the other. And I think that is a disservice to them as people and as characters to only explore them in dynamics with each other. And the same holds for the Tika 3.
yeah. I understand that perspective. I think I agree with it to some extent, but I do think there are some duos that I think are legitimately interesting if we see the evolution of their gameplay.
Yeah.
on Survivor. Like that's how I feel about Colby and Jerry. Like I get your point about, well, they should be separated at some point, but I think them splitting off is more interesting when they're doing it despite being on the same season.
Yeah.
Like to me, the sort of splintering of Jerry and Colby on Heroes versus Villains, I know a season that you haven't seen,
Mm-hmm.
but it's fascinating to me, and I think it's great television and it's very interesting. I think similarly, like you can have people that maybe have a tumultuous relationship. Like I know these people aren't in either of yours, but like say you had Mary and Say, and you put them on a tribe together again, or a season together again, I think it'd be interesting. Like a lot
Yeah.
of the most interesting dynamics to me in returnee seasons are people who have already played and their dynamics with one another. Like in
Mm-hmm.
Karamoan, a season I love, but not everybody does. I find it very interesting that Francesca and Andrea and Philip are all from Redemption Island and all come back to play and are on the same tribe together and have to intermingle with these dynamics again and reform or read
Mm-hmm.
Brew and Bonds. I love that. I think it's very interesting, and I think some people, I think some people deserve to be able to get away from the shadow of somebody else through their own gameplay, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah. I see that.
Yeah.
I'll go over quick the actual dreams list. From 41, we have JD and Erica.
Shouts out
Um,
JD.
shout out to JD. From 42, we have Marianne and Omer. From 43, we have Janine and Dwight.
Now
Um,
those two would be interesting to see play together. That would
that's
be
what I'm saying.
interesting.
Yeah, because I think at least with my dreams list, it tended to be people who I think would like be more interesting or had like more shots that I'm should need them. Carolyn Shoulder, Matthew Grimstead Melee, because I didn't want to type that all out. No
Yeah,
hate to the
sure.
goat. But I think he's someone who should be on anyone's consideration for New Era All Stars because never have I seen Jeff cape for someone who's been a goat or not a goat who's quit.
He didn't
Ever.
really quit.
He didn't actually quit, but the fact of the matter is you have a situation where it could be considered a quit, and Jeff has gone out on the record to be like, "Hey, I kind of defend this guy." That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Either way, next for 45 we have Kelly, Jake, and Julie.
I love Julie. I love Julie being on that list. I love
Dude,
that.
I think Julie is the right mix of like high strategy, social, and chaos. That
Yeah.
like she's willing to enforce her own way enough in an alliance to piss people off. Especially if she thinks that's her chance to win. And I think that makes it interesting in a season with like high strategies. You need people who are both high strategy and cutthroat enough to say, I'm pushing my way. And Julie fits that entirely.
I really so this just came to mind. This is something I thought about in 45, but it's really striking me now that like All Star season is on the horizon. Like she reminds me of later Survivor All Stars. Like she is strategic, chaotic, loyal, but very aware of the game, while also being an older white woman, but not being like, but still being like physically strong in her own way.
Yeah.
Like, so I love that. I would love to see Julie come back. I would love to see a lot of people from 45 come back, but Julie has the shortest window, so to speak. So
I will
sooner
say
rather than
this
later.
this thought experiment made me realize how much like how Survivor seasons they have their different strengths, but how much 45 was a character driven season. Like
Very
how
character
many
driven.
good
Yeah.
cast members were from 45 that there's a decent chunk that I'm like, okay, they could come again. Um,
Yeah.
46, I have Hunter on this list. Partially because he's a guy I liked, and also partially because my girlfriend bought me a cameo of his once. Shout outs.
Yeah.
47, we have Caroline, Soul, and Keyshawn. I forget why I put Caroline on here, but I think she'd be a good pick.
I like Caroline.
But Saul and Keyshawn, I think were fun ones that were just for me. I could also see cutting Keyshawn for like Sam. That would also make things interesting.
Like
But
Sam,
48 is Shaheen, Camilla, Star. It's funny because within the people who we had our list, there's 3 or 4 out of 4 of us. I believe it was 3, if not all of us, all said we want Star.
Interesting.
Yeah, Shows you the power of the group. She was like one of the few people who were like, oh yeah, oh wait, yeah, no, cut Keyshawn for Thomas. Sorry, not even Sam, but
Yeah.
maybe Thomas. I mean, there's a slot like obviously again things have a 48 bias to them, but there's enough people that have like unfinished narratives from that season, like again Shaheen, Camilla Starr, and like narratives that weren't fully fulfilled by the story that I'm attached to. And if it's coming soon, I mean, we know Survivor seasons have a recency bias when it comes to like all stars
Mhm.
and returnees. That I think like it's valid, at least for mine to be weighted that way, anyways. But
Yeah.
yeah,
No, for sure. My thoughts when it comes to what I would like a new era's All Star this season to be. Um, I already mentioned the normal All Star season, so I'll use that as a reference because it's about the same amount of seasons. Um, that season had a ton of people from season one and season two, partially because of what I was saying before. Of like those were the most popular seasons. You want to rope people back in for an All Star season. You put the people know. You put the Richard Hatches and you put the Colby Donaldsons, et cetera, et cetera. Um, that's how I would want New Era Survivor to be with 45 and to some extent 46. I want as many people from those two seasons as possible. I want
mm-hmm.
Julie. I want maybe D. I want Austin. I want Drew. I want Katura. I might want Jake. I want Kelly. 46, I want Venus. I want Q. I want
Maria.
Maria. And I don't need Charlie, but that sort of thing. Like,
Yeah,
I want a lot of people from those seasons because those are the seasons that I think have the strongest characters, the strongest personalities that I think would be fun to see on another season and have the least likely chance to be a total dud, at least to
yeah.
me. So,
I
yeah.
will say, shout outs to my buddy Brandon, who did his list. He had on his list specifically the only winner he had was Gabler.
I
Which
love that. I love
here's
that.
the thing: he's not a Gabler fan, but he understands that like when it comes to winning and like an All Star season, he's the only winner that like he was weird about it, and that makes Gable an interesting winner for an All Star season because you don't immediately come with that on your back of like, oh, he's a win, like
Yeah.
oh, there's winners everywhere. We got to get rid of the winners. So they're just going to win again. It's like, well, it's fucking Gabler.
Yeah. I mean, he's the closest to a new era Sandra.
Yeah. It's
Like,
such a weird way to put it, but yes.
it's true though. It's true.
Oh,
So yeah, no, I like that. I mean, I'm not even thinking about like I wasn't thinking about my cast like who I think would win. I don't really care. I
mm-hmm.
think anybody could. I'd like to see Andrea win. I like Andrea a lot, but you know, besides the point. Anyways, but yeah, very interesting, very fun thought experiment. I love talking about potential Survivor casts and all of that
Yeah.
stuff. You got
I
anything
think
more
I think
on
you
your brain?
should just for us. You do your homework. You the viewer at home, do your homework. Toss it in the comments.
I'd
I'd love
love to
to
see your
see
thoughts.
what your New Era All Stars cast could look
I
like.
will respond to it. If you put it down, I will respond to it and I will judge you.
Yeah, I might also respond to that too. If you see someone with a YouTube account named Thunder Thighs Jones, that's not some random guy. That's me.
That's
Hi.
my goat. That's who that is. Yeah.
But yeah, my phone's on 8%. I don't have much more to say. Thank you
Yes.
for having me. You
Of
do the
course.
wrap up you need to do.
I'm wrapping it up. Thanks so much, Sunder, for joining. Fun season of TV. I will be back here to talk more things reality TV. Just what I feel like. I'll probably be talking Big Brother when it starts up. We'll see how long that goes. Hey, I might be there for the long haul. You never know. I'd like to do
Yeah.
some more miscellaneous podcasts just about random thoughts I have on things in Survivor, but let it be known that I'm going to keep wondering if you've seen any good moves lately. And this podcast is not going to die. I would love to keep it going. And I thank you all for the support. A lot of the videos and stuff have over 100 views, which may not seem like a lot, but considering that I basically just made this for the RHAP folks and myself, it means a lot to me to have the support. The listens on Spotify and on YouTube mean a lot to me. I thank you all for your support. And if you got through this whole podcast, good on you. You're a good person and everybody loves you.
One more thing. If you'd like to hear us talk about Kid Nation, say that a lot because we can keep watching that, but my internet's been shit. That might be a
Yeah.
future topic point. Shout outs, Kid Nation.
Shouts out to Kid Nation. All right. With that, thank you all for listening and have a great rest of your day. Bye bye.